Kane reflects on the recent events, realizing with dawning horror that Alfred's strength is the real deal. With Michael and Chad's futures sealed, he understands that Alfred is coming to mercilessly drive them all to ruin. Kane knows Alfred plans to exact revenge and insists they need a plan. Thylos, however, suggests simply rushing him with a group of 30. Spotting a group of delinquents, one of their leaders boasts they could gather 100 men. Thylos calls out to the one he sees as a potential ally. Thylos grabs the student, proposing they team up to crush the servant kid, Alfred. Kane adds that Alfred supposedly took down a group of professional assassins and that they had all decided to stay away from him. The student panics, realizing who Thylos is talking about, yelling that Alfred can use 8th-tier magic. Terrified, the student declares his group wants nothing to do with their plans and flees. Thylos is furious at being defied, while Kane points out that they don't even have the power to command underlings anymore. As Thylos rants about being looked down upon, Kane listens. Kane grits his teeth, acknowledging that with Chad and Michael gone, their reputation is in tatters. He always knew they were idiots, but he's shocked by the depth of their stupidity. Kane interrupts their bickering, trying to make him see the bigger picture. 2 of their allies have already been taken down. He reflects that their privileged upbringing, where they were given everything without effort, has left them unable to comprehend the true danger they face. Thylos brings up the mock battle and the risk of their class being swapped, only to dismiss the possibility. Kane realizes his companions are beyond help and announces he's going to the cafeteria. The others tell him to leave the thinking to them, confident they can handle Alfred. As he walks away, Kane resigns himself to the fact that they are up against a monster and wonders if he should cut his allies loose. Kane wonders how to navigate the situation. He arrives at the cafeteria. Inside, he sees Alfred and Lisa. Alfred notes that the members of their class are preparing tables and meals for Class 1. Lisa confirms this, adding that she's used to it by now. Alfred gets Lisa's attention. With a few swift movements, he demonstrates an elegant way to fold a napkin. Lisa is amazed, wondering how he could possibly fold it so perfectly. Lisa marvels at the perfect, elegant napkin fold. Just then, the headmaster approaches, announcing that he has been searching for them and wants to have a word with Alfred. Lisa is startled to see the headmaster. Alfred, however, remains calm, recognizing that the perfect moment has arrived. He thinks to himself that it is time for the curtains to rise. His counterattack begins now. Before the headmaster can state his business, Alfred interjects, asking him to hear a proposal first. After a moment of thought, the headmaster says he understands what Alfred is proposing, but needs time to ponder it. Alfred agrees, confident that the pieces are all set. He is ready to see how things will play out. At a staff meeting, the headmaster informs the other educators that Alfred's exam score went beyond the academy's educational limits, achieving the highest score in its history. He has already sent a messenger to the capital to request a formal magic appraisal to prepare for Alfred's incredible potential. With that said, he turns his attention to Clive. The headmaster asks Clive if he promised to swap the positions of Class 1 and Class 3 if his class were to be defeated. Clive dismisses it as a simple verbal promise. He admits that he had no plans to take it seriously. The headmaster, however, stares him down and states that he is considering the matter with the utmost gravity. Clive is shocked into silence as his glasses crack. The headmaster explains that the Emperor himself approved a policy to select candidates for the 10 blades of the round based on capability, not status, while he had previously ignored the unfair treatment of Class 3 to maintain balance with the nobles. He declares that the time for change is now ripe. The headmaster continues, explaining that Alfred is destined to become a world-renowned sorcerer and elevate the Academy's name. He then recalls Alfred's warning. If Clive were to shamefully recant his promise, Alfred would hold the entire Academy in contempt and was even prepared to submit a letter of withdrawal. The realization that Alfred called him out by name and plans to exact revenge sends a chill down Clive's spine. The headmaster warns that if the mock battle results in the classes switching positions, they will face criticism from noble parents. He delivers the final blow. Clive, as the senior educator who originated the issue, will assume full responsibility. Clive is horrified. He's being ordered to defeat a class containing both Thylos and the unprecedented prodigy Alfred, using only regular students. The unreasonable demand sinks in. If his class loses, he loses his job. He has never faced such a crisis in his life. He realizes he is in serious trouble, boiling hot water from which he cannot escape. He internally screams, reminding himself that he comes from an elite family and was supposed to be next in line for headmaster. Now his entire future is collapsing, and he has no idea what is happening. Clive walks alone through a school corridor, lost in thought. He is suddenly stopped by the sight of Alfred standing before him. Alfred wastes no time, telling Mr. Clive that they need to speak. Alfred tells Clive that they are both backed into a corner. Clive realizes with dismay that Alfred is far more capable than he ever anticipated. Alfred then begins to lay out a proposal for the troubled educator. He reveals his secret status as a candidate for the prestigious 10 blades of the round. Clive reacts in shock to Alfred's bombshell. He frantically points out that such information is highly confidential, but Alfred is undeterred. Alfred gravely warns that without action, they both face ruin. Weighing the dire stakes, Clive agrees to listen to the proposal. Alfred explains that his plan requires Clive's ability to manipulate the Academy systems. Alfred declares that they are now at war, and he possesses the skills to control the battlefield. He vows to use every available method to utterly annihilate his true enemies in the upcoming battle. In her room in the Magic Academy's commoner dormitory, Lisa is fast asleep. She dreams of her childhood, when her older sister was taken away to a noble's manor. The memory begins with her sister's fateful encounter with a duke. Young Lisa was ecstatic, believing her sister was going to become a duchess. Looking back, she understands she was too ignorant to see the truth or comprehend her sister's tears. Her younger self happily waved goodbye, naively wishing her sister well. But the dream turns to a nightmare, revealing the horrible truth of what happened to her sister at the hands of the Duke. Her dream showed her the cruelty of the Duke's wife and the retaliation her sister faced. When the Duke cast her aside, she had nowhere to turn. All young Lisa knew was that her sister, who had protected her from everything, had promised to write. Months later, a letter finally came, and young Lisa was overjoyed. The letter revealed the tragic truth. Her sister had been a maid, not a duchess, and had recently died by suicide. The money enclosed was merely an apology, and the letter was stiffly written. The memory causes the sleeping Lisa to cry, murmuring her sister's name. Waking from the dream, Lisa renews her vow to never be a victim again. This determination is what pushed her to study hard and get into the academy. Yet she knows that even here, the rigid social hierarchy of nobles and servants persists. She looks at a photo of her sister, lamenting that she continues to have things taken from her. Lisa greets the image of her sister before starting her day. Opening her window, she is surprised by what she sees outside. She greets Alfred, who is walking below her window. After meeting up, she reminds him to call her Lisa, which he apologetically agrees to. She voices her determination, stating she won't let anything else be taken from her. Their focus shifts to the impending class versus class battle set for the following day. With newfound determination, Lisa and Alfred resolve to face the challenge together. A notice is posted, officially announcing the rules for the class battle. Alfred thinks to himself, confident that his plan ensures his opponent's defeat. Lisa frets about the mock battle against Class 1, vowing to give it her all so she won't be a burden. Alfred calmly tells her not to worry about the outcome of her match. He states with confidence that as long as he and Thylos are victorious, their team will be fine. Lisa knows that in Alfred's plans for victory, she isn't a factor. She feels that whether she's a burden or not is irrelevant, she's simply there to fill a spot on the team. She understands the gap between her and her genius teammates, and that's exactly what fuels her discontent. Lisa closes her eyes in frustration, hating that she is still so weak. Their conversation is interrupted by the early arrival of Thylos. Thylos gravely informs Master Al that he has terrible news regarding the upcoming mock battle. The three of them look over the updated rules for the battle. Thylos explains the new format is a round-robin tournament with advancement based on average winning percentages. Other students gossip that their team was placed in a separate block, believing it's a sign that their opponents are afraid to face them directly. Lisa protests the sudden rule changes for an exam that determines who moves to the next grade. Thylos identifies the scheme as the reckless work of the 10 blades of the round. Lisa realizes the 10 blades are behind this trap to get at Alfred. Alfred studies the rules, getting a bad feeling about the detail regarding average winning percentages. Lisa is horrified as she begins to understand the implications of the new rules. Thylos explains that they now need a victory rate of over 80% to advance. He adds that with their current team, a 2-win, 1-loss result is a significant risk, which would mean they fail. Lisa panics, realizing that a loss on her part would prevent them from reaching the final tournament. Alfred states that he and Thylos have overwhelming power. Thylos laments that this means he knows who the cause of a potential loss would be. Alfred calls out to the distraught Lisa. Thylos tells Lisa he has something he wants to show her. An explanation reveals that magic is tied to the soul, and near-death experiences can amplify it. Thylos unveils a potion called 50-50, which Alfred explains has a 50% chance of killing its consumer. Thylos explains that because this method can only be used once, very few people attempt it. Lisa explains that it's because while the reward is great, the risk of death is too high. She concludes that this is why most people stick to traditional training, and Thylos confirms she is correct. Thylos tells Lisa that with this power-up, she would be able to easily defeat any other student in their grade. He then dismisses it, claiming he only wanted to show her the rare medicine. As he suggests they head back to class, Lisa looks on with determination. She calls out to Thylos, stopping him in his tracks. Lisa tells Thylos it's unfair to show her the potion if he wasn't planning for her to drink it. Thylos calmly replies that he would never tell her to drink something that could kill her. Lisa knows he has a point, and that taking the medicine is too dangerous. However, she also knows that she cannot survive if she remains weak. Lisa reflects on all the unreasonable circumstances she has endured, knowing she must become stronger to survive. She sees her teammates as proof that it's possible to overcome such obstacles with strength. With newfound determination, she grips the potion bottle. Lisa boldly declares that she knows what she must do and tells the boys to witness her resolve. She drinks the entire potion, realizing this is a turning point in her life. Alfred watches in stunned silence. Thylos is equally shocked by her sudden action. After drinking it, she states her desire to become an ally she can be proud of. The potion takes effect instantly, and Lisa's body goes limp. Alfred moves swiftly, catching her as she falls. Alfred calls Thylos reckless for his stunt. Thylos shoots back that Alfred is just as bad, and that he knew he could save her. Thylos reveals he was counting on Al's ability to make the death rate 0. Alfred complains that saving her and ensuring her recovery will take years of his time and effort. Alfred begins to heal Lisa, calling the idea of caring for her foolish. Thylos smiles, satisfied with the outcome. However, Alfred admits that her display of resolve made it all worth it. Looking down at her, Alfred addresses her by her full name, Lisa Wilson. As she begins to wake, Lisa is shocked to hear Al use her real name. Alfred declares that their preparations are complete, and it's time to deal with their enemies. He vows to achieve an overwhelming victory for himself and the allies he has accepted. One of the Academy's delinquent leaders lands a powerful kick on his opponent. He continues his relentless assault, stomping on the downed student with a crazed expression. With his victory, all 3 of the delinquent leaders have won their matches. They smugly comment on how weak their opponents were, with one admitting he was the one who designed the favorable tournament layout. They laugh amongst themselves at how easy their victories were. The brash victor gloats about being the strongest. Watching from the stands, Alfred asks Thylos how things are going. Thylos informs him that their team's matches are starting soon. Alfred suggests they go watch and see what's in store. As Thylos' match begins, he internally resolves to witness the true strength of the rare genius who suddenly appeared in the servant class. The moment the match is called, Thylos' opponent immediately falls to his knees and gives up. Thylos smiles, calling it a wise decision and noting that his opponent understood the difference between bravery and foolhardiness. He walks away pleased that he didn't have to get his hands dirty. The delinquents are annoyed, cursing Thylos for winning without a fight and calling his opponent a loser. His companion retorts that he would be begging for mercy too if he had to face Thylos, but the brash one boasts of his invincibility before their curly-haired friend announces Alfred's turn. In the arena, Lisa nervously approaches Alfred. She stammers that she has a request. She tells Alfred she wants to surrender, and he asks if she wishes to admit defeat before the battle has even begun. She frantically explains that she has no other choice, knowing she can't possibly win. Alfred understands her reasoning is tied to Thylos' earlier words about foolhardiness, but his own approach is different. He realizes she is surrendering to him directly, rather than the proctor. Instead of accepting, he promises to go easy on her and challenges her to try and fight him. A nervous Lisa agrees. The match begins and Alfred immediately leaps back, declaring he's using 7th-tier magic. Lisa is shocked, wondering what happened to his promise to go easy. Alfred unleashes a powerful spell called Evil's Flare, a level of magic that not even the instructors can use. A massive blast of energy erupts from his hand, hurtling across the arena. The spell explodes with devastating force. The explosion completely obliterates the fighting stage. Watching from the sidelines, the delinquents are horrified by the display of power, worried that even the proctor might have been turned to ash. As the debris clears, Lisa and the proctor are revealed to be safe inside a heat-resistant wall. Alfred yells for them to look out as the platform beneath them crumbles. With a snap of his fingers, Alfred uses wind control. He gently guides both Lisa and the proctor away from the destroyed ring. They land safely on the ground outside the battle area. Alfred calmly asks the dazed proctor if stepping outside the ring constitutes a loss. The proctor, realizing Lisa is out of bounds, declares Alfred the victor. Thylos watches with a knowing chuckle, impressed by Alfred's method of protecting her with both a wall and wind control. Thylos reflects on his own method of accepting a surrender which shames an opponent by destroying their reputation. He realized this was what Lisa feared, so Alfred chose to demonstrate his power while removing her from the battlefield. In doing so, Alfred won without damaging her reputation or her pride. Thylos is deeply impressed with Master Alfred. Meanwhile, the delinquents are in a panic, terrified at the prospect of facing him and realizing that without a barrier like the one he created, they would be reduced to ash. They fret over their chances, with one grimly concluding that Alfred's team won't make it to the end. The curly-haired one sympathizes with Alfred, remarking on his suffering. Nearby, another student watches them, coldly thinking how dreadful it is to have a burden on one's team. The delinquents discuss the matchup, one admitting he purposely pitted Levi against Lisa, whom he calls a weakling. Another chimes in, laughing that even he can't compare to Levi's power. He concludes that a servant class girl could never hope to win. Lisa remembers Alfred's words, instructing her to listen carefully to his plan. Alfred explains that her opponent will look down on her with contempt. He continues, predicting that her enemy will always try to display their overwhelming strength. He concludes that this will be done by firing off a remarkable and powerful skill right at the start. Lisa remembers Alfred asking if her specialty was defensive magic. Levi lets out a battle cry. He unleashes a massive 5th-tier magic spell called Fire Dance. The flames from Levi's attack incinerate everything in their path. One of the delinquents shouts that even her sword will be turned to ash. Recalling Alfred's vow, Lisa prepares her counter. She unleashes her own 5th-tier magic, a spirit defense barrier. She recalls his words, stating that no student in the academy could break her defense. Lisa stands firm behind her powerful, cracking barrier, proving Alfred right. Levi is stunned, wondering how she could have possibly defended against his attack. She thinks to herself that she knows this was all part of Al's plan. Lisa thinks about how she was readying her magic while defending, waiting for this exact moment. She lunges toward her shocked opponent. She moves with lightning speed to counter him. Lisa strikes with a powerful 5th-tier ice spell, Ice Fang. Levi cries out in pain as he is thrown backward. He rolls across the ground, defeated. The delinquents watch the outcome, stunned. Levi lies on the ground, unconscious. The delinquents scream in disbelief at what just happened. Lisa is amazed that everything went exactly as Al had predicted. Filled with confidence, she points forward and declares that this means she wins. The story shifts to the Bale family home. A man is introduced as Alfred's father, Algren Bale. A butler enters, announcing he has news for his master. Algren asks what it is, noting it is rare for him to come from the secondary residence. When the butler brings up Alfred, Algren sternly tells him never to speak of him. He declares that he disowned that disgrace and no longer considers him his son. The butler pleads with his master to listen, exclaiming that the exam was incredible. Algren replies with a dismissive, "Is that so?" He states that if Alfred is being held back again, he couldn't care less. He coldly declares that Alfred brought this on himself and orders the butler to be thrown out, not caring if his son dies. Algren threatens to fire the butler if he speaks Alfred's name again. The butler quickly protests, saying that's not it. He reveals that the young master achieved a perfect score on the exam. Furthermore, he beat out Thylos Taylor for first in his grade, causing Algren to freeze mid-signature. Algren, now listening intently, tells him to go on. The butler continues, explaining that Alfred cast an 8th-tier spell in the target exam and showed overwhelming power in the mock battle. Algren finds this news hard to believe and questions what is happening. The butler reveals that the headmaster believes Alfred may be manifesting atavism. Algren considers his family's powerful magical lineage, descended from fierce gods, and finds this news interesting. He asks about the rest of the exam, and the butler informs him of the final tournament next week, noting Alfred's team has won every match. Algren stands and orders his schedule cleared for that day, stating he will observe the match himself. Algren declares that Alfred has finally become worthy of being called his son. Meanwhile, Alfred looks back with a startled expression, as if he felt something. In Class A, a student named Charles panics, realizing with dread that they are slated to face Alfred's team in the final tournament. He frantically wonders what they can do, even suggesting they withdraw from the fight altogether. His classmate dismisses the idea, knowing it would only make things worse. They are blocked at every exit with no escape. Charles questions why this is happening when they only followed the orders they were given. His friend insists they weren't the ones who actually set up Alfred to be bullied. Charles remembers it all started with a shady notice from someone claiming to be from the 10 Blades. The notice announced that Alfred had been abandoned by his own father, but at the time Charles didn't care. He recalls arriving the next day to find Alfred's desk defiled, marking the moment they all began to see him as a plaything. His friend agrees they were merely onlookers and questions why they should now fear his revenge. In a moment of realization, Charles furiously blames the 10 Blades of the round for everything. His friend quickly agrees with the assessment. The friend wonders what will happen to the ringleader of the 10 Blades. He asks Charles if he is worried about the person who set them up, calling them a monster. Charles dismisses them as dead meat, a statement his friend finds reassuring. But Charles's bravado crumbles as he fears that if his own identity gets out, Alfred wouldn't hesitate to kill him. In the Class 3 classroom after the mock battle exam, a student approaches Alfred. Alfred turns to face him, asking what he wants. The student recalls a time when he believed they should just quietly listen to their superiors and not upset them. He timidly tries to get Alfred's attention. The student approaches Alfred, wanting to apologize. He apologizes on behalf of the class for rising up against Alfred and the class representative when they wanted to fight back. Alfred listens silently. The student continues, explaining that after witnessing Alfred's swift attack, he realized how amazing he was. He knew Thylos was powerful, but he had no idea Alfred and the class rep were so strong. He admits he knows he can't become as strong as them due to their different talents. He now sees Alfred as the shining star of their class and believes that with hard work they can all become strong too. He sincerely thanks Alfred and wishes him victory in the finals. Having said what he came to say, he turns to leave. Alfred accepts the apology, but challenges the student's belief that he can't become like them even with hard work. The student is taken aback, questioning if he was wrong. Alfred explains that his own power came from a rare atavism and that Thylos was already gifted. However, he points out that Lisa willingly drank a potentially fatal nostrum, taking a massive risk to change her fate. He continues, telling the astonished student that while Thylos may seem like a genius, his true talents were unlocked through nothing but relentless hard work. Alfred then makes a promise: he will win the upcoming tournament and liberate their class from its servant status, allowing them to use their time freely. Alfred acknowledges that life is unfair regarding talents and family status. He states that the only thing fair to all human beings is time. He passionately tells his classmates that the chance they've been given is theirs to make the best of, urging them not to abandon hope. He shares his core belief with them: by working hard, humans can overcome even monstrous opponents. As he speaks, the final tournament pairings for the team mock battle are posted. The notice from the headmaster declares that Class 3 will advance to the finals unchallenged, and Class A is forbidden from withdrawing. This decision pits Alfred against the headmaster's influence. Students gather around the notice board, recognizing Class A as Alfred's former bullies and seeing the upcoming match as a public execution. Others note that since every other class surrendered, the headmaster must have been won over by Alfred. Charles sees the notice for what it truly is: an invitation to a revenge match orchestrated by Alfred. Furious, Charles curses Alfred's name. He realizes Alfred has no intention of letting them escape this. Back in their classroom, the other Class A students are in an uproar. One shouts that if their representatives lose, the entire class will be demoted. He confronts the nobles directly, asking them a simple question: can they win or will they lose? One of the nobles scoffs at the idea of winning against a monster who can use 8th-tier magic and Thylos tailor. A female noble retorts that while she knows they can't win, she expected them to have some tricks up their sleeves. Her condescension is met with fury, as the male noble snaps back that their plans have already failed. The female noble simply orders them to win, calling it a command from a great noble. This enrages the other students, who shout that they are great nobles too. They tell her to fight if she has time to complain, but she dismisses fighting as a barbaric act for commoners. As the argument escalates, one student overhears something that stops him cold. They are about to be replaced. A dark-haired girl explains the horrifying truth: if their representatives lose, Class A will swap places with Class 3. The realization dawns on another student that they will become the servants. The girl confirms this, wondering in disbelief if she, the daughter of the Habsburg household, could truly become a servant. The boy who demanded answers breaks down completely, screaming that he won't allow this to happen. The classroom descends into chaos and despair as the nobles grapple with the loss of their status. Watching the infighting and panic from the doorway, one of the noble representatives looks on with a grim expression. He mutters to himself that their class is already done for, their unity completely shattered. In a fit of rage, Charles kicks a nearby crate. His informant approaches, asking why he's taking his anger out on an inanimate object. Charles retorts that his informant, of all people, should know exactly why he's so frustrated. The informant concedes the point and hands over a stack of documents, explaining that he investigated Alfred's actions before and after his sudden change. He uncovered an interesting detail in Alfred's borrowing history from the National Library, directing Charles to a specific checkout date. Charles is shocked to see the date. It was the day before Alfred returned to the academy. The informant suggests Alfred was looking for a way to get revenge. The informant elaborates that Alfred had researched medicines for physical enhancement and methods to temporarily boost magical power, all of which had extreme effects. As the informant wonders what's wrong from a distance, Charles asks for a moment of silence. He pieces it all together. Alfred's sudden strength and complete personality shift would make sense if he had used one particular book. The informant reveals the title of the book that piqued his curiosity: a complete collection on demon summoning rituals, a text just shy of being a forbidden grimoire. Charles dismisses the common theory of atavism and proposes his own conclusion about how Alfred became so strong. He details the two methods of forming a powerful contract with a demon, the first being to offer one's soul as collateral. Charles explains the second method is to allow a demon to descend into the world by possessing your body, concluding this is what Alfred did. He explains that since demons are the ancestors of monster kind, humans are like livestock to them and cannot normally challenge them. However, with a grim smile, he proclaims that there is a way to defeat a demon and that they can win. Elsewhere, Mr. Clive slams his fist on a desk in frustration. He curses Charles, realizing the student's plan has failed and that a loss to the servant class means he'll be driven out of the academy. He laments that there's no way his students can possibly win against Alfred and Thylos. He dreads the prospect of being demoted to a teaching job at a second-rate countryside academy. Suddenly, the headmaster appears, calling Clive's name. Startled, Clive asks what he can do for him. The headmaster reminds him that his class is full of children from high-ranking noble families and questions what would happen if they were demoted. He warns that the resulting resentment from their families will not be satisfied by Clive losing his job alone. The headmaster states that while he will take responsibility, the families will likely be out for the blood of the one they see as the perpetrator. Clive balks at being called the perpetrator. The headmaster believes the nobles will make their own moves as a result of the demotion. He predicts Clive will be banned from all magical academies, making it impossible for him to find work as a sorcerer. The headmaster finishes his grim prediction, stating that even selling alchemical medicines will be out of Clive's reach. The teacher realizes with horror that his entire future as a sorcerer is at stake, with insurmountable roadblocks ahead. The headmaster advises Clive to own up to his actions and prepare himself for what's to come. As Clive stammers, unable to respond, he slumps into his chair in defeat. The headmaster turns to leave, thinking to himself that for Clive, this situation is nothing short of a death sentence. After the headmaster leaves, Clive trudges down the hall. He feels completely finished, believing everything is over. Just then, Charles calls out to him. Clive turns, wearily acknowledging the student. Charles looks at him coolly and states that he has a request. Mr. Clive immediately assumes it's about Alfred and refuses to get involved, not wanting to get into any more trouble. Charles calmly states he's already aware of Clive's predicament. This only angers Clive, who says that if Charles knows, then he knows the answer is no. Charles simply replies that all they need to do is beat their opponents in the finals. Clive snaps, shouting that if there was a way to do that, he wouldn't be so terrified. Charles reveals his request. He wants Clive to help him get access to the library of forbidden grimoires. He describes it as a special, dangerous place that average students can't enter. Mr. Clive is aghast, pointing out that a student accessing forbidden grimoires could be considered a crime. Charles smirks, reminding the desperate teacher that his back is against the wall, and he is in no position to lecture. Charles tells Mr. Clive that it's time to get with the program, as they both face annihilation otherwise. A shudder runs through the defeated teacher. Charles declares this is their only option. Later, he addresses his classmates, getting their attention by reminding them that none of them want to be demoted to the servant class. The other students are confused, asking why Charles has gathered them just to state the obvious. He silences them with a dramatic announcement. He has discovered the secret behind Alfred's strength. With a serious expression, he reveals that Alfred is under demon possession. The classroom erupts in shock, with students realizing this explains Alfred's strange personality. One student shouts that summoning a powerful demon requires offering one's own life. He exclaims that someone would have to be at the end of their rope to do such a thing. A sudden, horrifying realization dawns on him. The student cries out that they were the ones who pushed Alfred to the end of his rope. Others panic, questioning how they can possibly fight a demon with 8th-tier magic. Charles agrees they can't involve the nation or royal court sorcerers, as it would cause a diplomatic nightmare with monster kind. However, he hints that there is another way. Charles calls out to Mr. Clive, demanding he hand something over. The teacher reluctantly presents a wrapped package. Charles identifies it as Temptations of the Netherworld, a forbidden grimoire on demon summoning left by a shaman 500 years ago. The students are horrified, demanding to know what Charles is plotting with a forbidden grimoire. He calmly explains his simple plan, an eye for an eye. If their opponent summoned a demon, then they can do the same. He deduces that since Alfred used a lesser grimoire and can only use 8th-tier magic, he must have summoned a lesser demon. Holding the grimoire aloft, Charles declares that with it, they will be able to summon a middle demon capable of casting 9th-tier magic. With a triumphant grin, he proclaims that victory is his and tells the lowly Alfred to watch out. The students are stunned by Charles's plan to summon a middle demon. While some are aghast, others see it as their only way to fight back against Alfred. One of his cronies praises Charles for the idea. However, a blonde female student interrupts, demanding they hold on a minute. She points out that summoning a middle demon requires ritual magic. This, in turn, necessitates a sacrifice, and she asks if Charles intends for one of them to volunteer. The other students erupt in protest, refusing to lay down their lives. Charles calmly confirms her assessment, stating that he expects all of them to be present to assist with the ritual. Charles reassures the terrified students, explaining they will only be helping to organize things for the ritual caster. He quietly notes to himself that not everyone present is a target of Alfred's revenge. Once the crowd is relieved and begins to file out, he thanks them for their time. However, he asks his two main cronies to stay behind for a moment. Once they are alone, Dennis fearfully asks if one of them has to be the sacrifice. Charles confirms this, saying he can't drag anyone else into it. However, he explains that no one has to die, they can simply split the cost of a single sacrifice between the three of them. According to his calculations, the price can be paid with a pair of legs and arms. As Charles begins to delegate which limbs they will offer to the demon, he is cut off. Dennis has a sudden, twisted idea. They should just snatch their former friend Michael from his manor and offer up his limbs instead. His companion enthusiastically calls the idea genius. Charles simply remarks on how twisted they are. To their shock, Michael himself appears in the doorway. He reveals that he can easily slip out of his manor for a few days, though he expects to be punished later. Charles, seizing the opportunity, announces that Michael will be offering both of his legs for the ritual. The two cronies are stunned speechless. Michael declares that his life is already over and his legs are useless since he can't go outside anyway, so he will gladly offer them. He morbidly jokes that with a maid to take care of him, Adding diaper changes to her duties won't change much. He then brings up their other friend, Chad, mentioning that his good looks have led to him being horrifically abused in his prison cell. He describes how aggressive criminals abuse Chad every single night. Hearing this gruesome story, Dennis and his companion are horrified. Michael points out that by comparison, they would only be losing a single arm each, a small price to pay to defeat Alfred and maintain their social status. One of the cronies asks why Michael is so obsessed with Alfred, but Michael explodes with rage, screaming that Alfred blew up his entire life. Having already resigned himself to never walking again, he turns on the other two, demanding to know what they will do, let Alfred crush them or make a sacrifice. Michael yells at them, asking if they'd rather spend the rest of their lives with only one arm, and demanding they make their decision immediately. Terrified, they look on. They quickly agree to his terms. With no further objections, Charles triumphantly announces that they will now focus on what he calls the massacre of Alfred dinner show. He declares that they must ensure their underhanded event goes perfectly. Michael declares that since he's suffering the most physically, he gets special seats to watch Alfred's demise. He vows to return the hatred 1,000 times over. One crony laments that if Chad were there, he could have kept his arm. Charles reveals that Chad is still doing his part. He told Michael where his saved money was hidden, which Charles has now used to make a generous donation to the criminal guild. Charles explains the purpose of the donation, to hire the guild to kidnap Lisa Wilson and lure Alfred into their trap. The others agree it's a good plan, as Lisa is obsessed with Alfred. Michael sadistically adds that while the demon tortures Alfred, they can assault Lisa right in front of him. Internally, Charles gloats that every detail is going according to his plan. He has made the teacher commit a crime by giving him the forbidden grimoire, and he has convinced the three losers to offer up their own bodies as the sacrifice. As the ringleader, he believes he will walk away completely unharmed. He laughs to himself, thinking of the others as fools dancing in the palm of his hand. He sees this as his final checkmate move against Alfred. Elsewhere, Alfred sits reading in a study. His servant Thylos approaches and kneels, offering a profound apology to his master. Alfred closes his book, noting that he had assigned Thylos to guard Lisa, yet she was still kidnapped by the criminal guild. Thylos begs for mercy, but Alfred tells him there is no need to apologize, recognizing this was a clearly coordinated effort. He acknowledges that for them to outmaneuver Thylos was a magnificent display of skill, even if their actions lack any aesthetic. Alfred stands, declaring that taking a young woman hostage is an exceedingly inelegant act performed by filth beyond saving. He tells Thylos it is time for them to go. Thylos, concerned, reminds him that the letter they left instructed them to come alone and tell no one. Alfred states that their demands do not bother him, and he has no intention of following them. Alfred declares there is a more elegant way to settle this affair. As Thylos looks on, confused, Alfred's eyes glow with cold fury. He vows that if his enemies dare to lay even a single finger on Lisa, he will ensure that not even a finger of theirs is left behind. At the Imperial Graduate University of Magic, the headmaster declares a crisis. He explains to a concerned colleague that he sent a sample of Alfred's blood for verification. Though he doesn't know the full details, he admits the results he has seen are staggering. The headmaster reveals that for the final tournament exam the next day, the Magic Guild is sending one of its top members. To his shock, it will be none other than Lady Isabella of the Sacred Flame, one of the 3 holy sages. The news sends the other staff members into an uproar, questioning why a holy sage would attend a simple student's exam. The headmaster admits he doesn't know why, and that for now, they can only await more news from the capital. He concludes that this development merely proves how truly unique of a student Alfred is. Meanwhile, Alfred and Thylos have located their target, an old Western-style building, once a site for demon worship. The residence is stained with the blood of many sacrifices and still possesses a great amount of dark mana. Thylos observes that there could be no better site for summoning a demon. Alfred details the items that have been smuggled into the manor: 100 chickens, 10 pigs, and small doses of heroin and marijuana. He confirms that Lisa was handed over to the boys of Class 1 outside the manor, though he couldn't spot any members of the criminal guild. Thylos connects the dots. The boys see them as a threat and are seeking revenge for Michael and Chad by attempting to summon a demon. He asks how Alfred investigated all of this so quickly. Alfred cryptically replies that he once pretended to be a detective. Thylos reasons that with their current materials, the most they could summon is a middle demon, finding it foolish they would try to fight Alfred with such means. Alfred sternly rebukes Thylos for letting his guard down, warning him that making assumptions based on advance information can be fatal. Thylos recalls his past failure with the Minotaur, remembering how he was caught off guard because the Adventurers Guild's information was wrong. He asks for forgiveness for his mistake. As Alfred strides toward the manor gate, he offers Thylos a piece of advice for his goal of becoming the strongest. A lion will hunt even a mouse at full strength. Inside, the gruesome preparations for the ritual are underway, with a blood-splattered summoning circle on the floor. The students stand around the circle, while Lisa lies unconscious on the floor. One of the students complains about the foul smell and the boredom, questioning why they even had to be there. Another laments their situation, whining that they just want to go home despite having committed serious crimes. Two of the main conspirators discuss their failings, admitting they had similar reservations. One says that if it means they won't become Alfred's servants, he doesn't care about his death. The other agrees, but adds that it would be a shame to leave empty-handed. He then tells his friend to look down at his feet. At their feet lies the unconscious Lisa. The first student understands immediately. His companion smirks, glad he came after all. He suggests that since Dennis and the others will have their way with her later, they might as well get a few rounds in for themselves. The students comment on the foul smell in the room, but one notes something else in the air. He feels himself being driven wild and struggles to calm his urges. His friend looks down at Lisa with a lecherous grin, while the first student agrees it's a shame what will happen to her. One of the boys mockingly tells the unconscious Lisa that she's going to die anyway, sarcastically calling her a poor thing. Deciding they've chatted enough, the other student begins to unbuckle his belt, ready to assault her. Suddenly, the student is sent flying by a powerful blow. Alfred has arrived and he walks towards Lisa, apologizing for being late. He covers her with his jacket. He remarks that the rotten smell and poor air quality of the room are unbecoming of a lady like her. With Thylos behind him, Alfred announces his intention to end things quickly. From the shadows, another student emerges. He questions Alfred's confidence. He declares that it is Alfred, not them, who will be put to an end. Surrounded by his enemies, Alfred's patience has worn thin. He coldly informs them that he is in an exceedingly foul mood and challenges all of them to come at him at once. Alfred coolly asks if they intend to fight him all at once. Michael reacts with surprise and disdain upon seeing Thylos. The bold student mocks Alfred, sneering that they won't be the ones fighting him. He maniacally announces that their revenge is about to begin. A brilliant magic circle erupts on the floor. One of the students cries out as the ritual's power consumes him. As their bodies crumble, the students curse Alfred. Thylos realizes that with 3 people sacrificing 4 limbs each, they are attempting a high-level summoning. He concludes they are aiming for the most powerful middle demon they can possibly summon. A monstrous skeletal figure, the middle demon Adradius, materializes from the summoning circle. The student gloats that the drugs have numbed his pain, and he introduces the demon, a user of 9th-tier magic, as their instrument of despair. Alfred watches the demon, saying nothing. Thylos steps between Alfred and the demon, requesting to handle the fight himself. Alfred questions his ability to face such a foe, but Thylos, while aware of his own limitations, stands firm. He is aware Alfred could overpower the demon, but he wants to face this trial himself. Alfred asks why he feels the need to go to such lengths. Thylos admits with shame that the blame for this incident is his, and despite his weakness, his greatest wish is to stay with Alfred. He fully understands that he lacks power and is a burden. Thylos recalls his brief but impactful time with Alfred, declaring him the only master he will ever acknowledge. This is his resolve. Alfred understands Thylos's desire to become his pupil, reminding him he never took one in his previous life. Thylos confirms he knows this, and Alfred agrees not to interfere. However, Alfred sets a harsh condition: he will not help Thylos even if it means his death. Alfred leaps back, telling Thylos to prove his resolve with results. Thylos accepts with a determined nod. Thylos faces the demon, immediately sensing its overwhelming magic and ominous presence. He understands that any hesitation against this foe will be fatal. Thylos gathers his energy, preparing a 6th-tier magic spell. The student mocks him, certain that such a low-level spell will have no effect. Thylos unleashes his spell, Splash of Flame, directly at the demon. Thylos reveals his true target was never the demon's body, but its feet. The resulting explosion kicks up a thick smokescreen, momentarily surprising the onlooker. The student scoffs at the tactic, knowing a demon doesn't need sight. He knows the demon relies on its ability to detect magic itself. The demon instantly locates its target within the smoke and strikes. The student thinks with certainty that Thylos is finished. Thylos reveals his true spell, 6th-tier magic double. The student cries out in disbelief. He had created a magic-packed clone to act as a decoy, all while suppressing his own magical signature to approach undetected. Thylos roars, telling the demon to feast on his attack. He drives his fist deep into the demon's chest. The blow lands with explosive force, but the demon catches his fist, stopping the attack cold. Thylos is shocked that it wasn't enough, wondering if this is his limit. The student comments on the impressive back and forth, but he confidently states that Thylos cannot possibly survive a blow from a middle demon, as a single punch would be enough to obliterate him. Thylos recalls everything that has happened since he met Alfred. He remembers how he has worked relentlessly on both magic refinement and physical enhancement. Both the demon and the student react in shock to the sudden surge of power. Thylos focuses, ready to unleash the culmination of his efforts. With a final cry of defiance, Thylos declares that his resolve will not be shattered. He channels all his power into his fist, and the demon's arm explodes upon impact. From the sidelines, Alfred watches with a smile, commending Thylos' tailor for a job well done. As Thylos stands battered but triumphant, Alfred gives his assessment. He scores his current buffing skills a full 80 points. With that, he offers his congratulations, telling Thylos that he has passed the trial. Having exhausted all his strength in the final blow, Thylos stumbles forward. His body gives out, pitching him toward the ground. The demon's body begins to dissolve from the force of the attack. Adradia seems to grin even as its form disintegrates. The demon vanishes completely, leaving Thylos panting from exertion. Thylos, battered and bruised, finally succumbs to his injuries and exhaustion. Before Thylos can hit the floor, Alfred appears in a flash, catching him just in time. Alfred gently lowers the exhausted Thylos to the ground. Lying in Alfred's arms, Thylos expresses his surprise, admitting he truly thought Alfred would not rescue him. Alfred confirms he said as much, but clarifies that the condition only applied until Thylos passed his test. Thylos, however, feels he has nothing to gain by becoming Alfred's pupil. He then slumps over, unconscious from his ordeal. Alfred lays the unconscious Thylos down, telling him that if he still wishes it, he should aim to become a better version of himself by his side. Michael, watching from afar, is utterly incensed by the display. He shouts in outrage, questioning who could possibly care about such sentiment. Michael screams that rescuing Thylos changes nothing, as they will both still die soon enough. He boasts that Adradius is known as the battlefield's god of death, having once killed and consumed the souls of 200 soldiers. He taunts Alfred, asking what he could possibly do against such a fearsome opponent. Michael continues to rave, pointing out that even the mighty Thylos couldn't land a single blow. Alfred reflects internally on Michael's foolishness, thinking him beyond salvation. He recognizes that Thylos, despite his fear and the overwhelming odds, had the courage to fight. He had devised a plan and found the resolve to face the demon head-on. Alfred can't believe Michael is unable to comprehend the greatness of Thylos' counterattack. The wheelchair-bound student offers Alfred a piece of advice. He tells him his only choice is to beg for mercy, a suggestion Michael meets with maniacal laughter. Michael declares that even if Alfred begged, they wouldn't let him live, as death is his only path. He screams for Alfred to die like a dog. Just then, Alfred calmly interrupts, telling Michael to stop. A teacher appears with a group of students, expressing his discouragement at Michael's foul language. His tone quickly shifts, however, as he sneers that dying is indeed the only available outcome. The newly arrived students join Michael in snickering at Alfred's predicament. Alfred recognizes their laughter. These are the same voices that tormented the original owner of his body. The memory of their bullying drives him to a cold fury. He silently questions if their inelegance and cruelty know no bounds. The demon Adradius, having fully reformed, addresses Alfred as a feeble sorcerer. It finds an abrupt ending dull. It offers him a chance to entertain it, promising not to move while Alfred unleashes his most powerful attack. Alfred remarks on the demon's ability to speak and questions its generous offer. Adradius explains that Alfred's aura suggests he is a powerful human, and it wishes to witness his power. It wants to see his most powerful attack, only to watch his face twist into despair when it inevitably fails. Alfred accepts the demon's reasoning, then asks forgiveness for what he is about to do, calling it a boring attack as he gathers magic at his fingertip. He unleashes his spell, an extreme-tier magic called Longinus Bullet. A blinding beam of energy shoots from his finger, engulfing the demon completely. The attack obliterates Adradius instantly, leaving only dark, dripping remnants. Michael is splattered by the demon's remains, his face a mask of shock. The demon's horned head falls to the floor with a sickening splat, silencing the entire room. The teacher and the other students stare in stunned disbelief at the sudden and overwhelming display of power. Alfred stands calmly amidst the aftermath of his devastating attack. Michael, covered in gore, can only stare in horror, unable to comprehend what he just witnessed. The students who had gathered to watch Alfred's demise scream in unison, unable to process the horrifying scene they just witnessed. Michael, covered in the demon's remains, is in utter denial. He can't believe Alfred took out a middle demon like the foul Adradius with a single blow. His mind races, rejecting the reality before him. He insists that this is not how things were supposed to go. Charles silently calculates the power required to defeat such a demon, realizing Alfred's strength surpasses that of an entire platoon of knights. As Charles grapples with this revelation, Alfred calmly speaks a specific time frame aloud, 6 months and 23 days. Alfred asks Michael if he knows what those numbers represent. He reveals that it was the exact amount of time the body's original master, a young boy, suffered torment at their hands. Declaring himself the vessel for the boy's vengeance, Alfred promises that judgment will be given fairly. His face contorted with rage, Alfred vows that he will make them suffer in hell for the exact same amount of time. He raises his hand, beginning to cast a new spell. He unleashes 9th-tier magic, summoning a massive, ornate dimension portal before his terrified audience. One of the students asks if Alfred is talking about plant monsters that capture and feed on people. Alfred explains that beyond the gate lie monsters he keeps as pets, specifically dryads. He clarifies that the highest ranking among them, the shadow flora, are his pets. These creatures force their human captives into constant nightmares and feed off their fear. Alfred continues, detailing how the shadow flora provide just enough nutrition to keep their victims alive, though it ultimately leads to mental destruction. It takes about half a year for a captured human to become an invalid, and many others end up with deep trauma. Since they were the ones who mentally broke the boy, Alfred declares he will ensure they suffer the exact same fate. The students cry out in terror, horrified at the prospect of being kept alive only to suffer through hell. Alfred coldly asks who made someone else suffer through it first. One of the boys panics, recalling that nightmares from dryads are as painful as physical agony, and they're being sentenced to 6 months of it. Suddenly, Charles begins to clap, congratulating Alfred for forcing him to play his ace. Michael desperately asks if Charles has a way to save them. Charles confirms he does, but that he cannot accomplish it alone. Charles turns to the other students and asks for their help to break through the situation. They readily agree, willing to do anything to avoid their fate. Charles then presses them, asking if they promise to do whatever it takes, even if it puts their lives on the line. This heavy ask causes them to hesitate. Michael, however, screams his enthusiastic agreement. He reasons that since they are all dead meat either way, the very least they can do is take Alfred down with them, drowning him in his own blood. With a sinister grin, Charles declares they have a deal. Charles explains that with the completed magic circle and a greater sacrifice, he can cast ultimate-tier magic. With a snap of his fingers, he sets the stage to summon a greater demon. The other students suddenly collapse, unable to move. They scream in agony as their bodies are taken over by the spell. One by one, their heads violently explode, their bodies becoming the sacrifice. The student with glasses shrieks as he watches his classmates become sacrifices. Charles, now alone amidst the gore, trembles as the reality of his actions sets in. All the students were children of nobles, and if he doesn't clean up this mess, he'll be executed. Alfred watches the carnage, admitting to himself that despite his threats, he wasn't actually going to kill them. Charles confesses that he, too, never anticipated things would go this far. Hearing this, Alfred's eyes narrow. He realizes Charles's words betray his identity as the mastermind and a candidate for the 10 blades of the round. Charles smirks, impressed that Alfred has figured it out, complimenting him on being more than just magically talented. Alfred asks why Charles persecuted him. Charles scoffs, claiming he did nothing but give Alfred what he justly earned. He explodes with rage, yelling that no matter how hard he studied or practiced, Alfred was always considered his superior simply because of his family name. Alfred calmly replies that he doesn't recall ever treating Charles poorly. Alfred says with sorrow that he believed Charles was his best friend. Charles mocks the idea, revealing their parents forced their friendship. He saw the moment Alfred's father disowned him as his long-awaited chance for revenge against the boy who always looked down on him. Charles declares that Alfred's despair ends now. He channels the power from the sacrifice to summon a greater demon who commands ultimatum magic, the right hand of Abaddon, one of the kings of hell. He unleashes the beast, commanding Alfred to feast his eyes upon death blaze. With a tremendous surge of dark energy, the monstrous form of the greater demon, Death Blaze, fully materializes from the magic circle. The demon towers over Charles, letting out a deafening roar. Wearing a clown mask now, Charles laughs manically, declaring that he will have his vengeance. He tells Alfred that the countdown for his despair begins now. Charles presents his ultimate trump card, the greater demon known as Death Blaze, said to be the right hand of Abaddon, one of the kings of hell. The mere presence and name of the demon sends a surviving student into a state of panic. The terrified student collapses, overwhelmed by the impossible sight. Alfred calmly observes the demon, realizing it is one of Abaddon's subordinates, yet senses there is more to it. Alfred identifies the demon as Death Blaze, a divine general serving under the shade of annihilation, Dark Nebula. Death Blaze is shocked, questioning how this human could possibly know its master's true name, while Charles watches in confusion. Alfred points out that surely a demon of its caliber would know of the one human who has established relations with Abaddon. The demon stammers as the pieces begin to click into place. Death Blaze recognizes him as the legendary heavenly visitor and great sage, Sir Cedric, who calmly confirms his identity. Kneeling, the demon affirms that its master is well and continues to seek powerful individuals like Cedric. Death Blaze relays a request from his master for Cedric to visit his castle, which Cedric agrees to consider. Charles watches, confused as to why Cedric is speaking down to a powerful demon. The entire situation leaves Charles reeling, unable to connect his friend Alfred with the legendary titles being used. Staggering, Charles confronts him, demanding to know if he just called himself Cedric. Cedric confirms his identity without hesitation, explaining that he is simply inhabiting Alfred's body. Charles struggles to process this, realizing that if it is true, he is facing the most powerful sage known to history. As memories of Alfred's recent impossible feats flash through his mind, Charles has a terrifying epiphany. If Alfred is truly the great sage Cedric, then everything that has happened suddenly makes perfect, horrifying sense. The weight of his actions crashes down on Charles. He realizes with dawning horror that he has picked a fight not with a disgraced noble, but with a man who walks among the divine. Cedric points out Charles's mistake, stating that if he truly wanted a challenge, he should have summoned the Demon King himself. Charles dismisses this as insanity, but Cedric counters that the Demon King might appear for a powerful enough summoner. Charles is stunned, realizing Cedric is speaking as if he personally knows the Demon King. Cedric reveals that he and the Demon King Abaddon have been sworn friends for 20 years. The revelation completely shatters Charles, who collapses, finally understanding the power he has challenged. Cedric coldly lists Charles's transgressions, from hounding Alfred to kidnapping Lisa and killing his classmates. His eyes glowing with cold fury, Cedric promises Charles that he will not be spared. Charles can only stare up in absolute terror. With a flick of his finger, Cedric sends a small, ornate knife spinning through the air. The knife clatters to a stop on the floor before the kneeling Charles. Confused, Charles asks what the weapon is for. Cedric calls it a shred of mercy, telling Charles to decide whether or not he will use it. Charles briefly wonders if this is a way out, but Cedric clarifies the alternative. Calculating that Charles stole roughly 1,500 years of life from his classmates, Cedric declares that he will feed him to the Shadow Flora, where he will be forced to suffer nightmares for that exact amount of time. Cedric explains that this torment will take place entirely within Charles's mind, as dreams. Charles shudders, realizing Cedric has no intention of showing him any true mercy. Cedric clarifies that the knife is his mercy, a chance for Charles to take his own life. Cedric lays out the ultimatum: suicide or endless nightmares at the roots of the Shadow Flora. Trembling, Charles stares at the knife, his only escape from a horrific fate. Wheezing in panic, he grabs the hilt of the blade. Internally, Charles curses him to hell for this choice. But his courage fails, and he begins to beg Master Cedric for mercy. When Cedric asks if Alfred's memories still reside within him, Charles seizes the opportunity, pleading with him as his best friend. Charles desperately appeals to their supposed friendship, asking if Al is on his side. Cedric looks on with disgust, musing that the 10 blades of the round would be disappointed to see him begging so pathetically. With his judgment passed, the magic begins to take hold. Shadowy tendrils grab hold of Charles, dragging him away. He screams for Al to wait and not to go through with this. Cedric stops him, asking if he remembers his last words to Alfred. He coldly informs Charles that he will now repeat those words back to him. Cedric turns away, echoing the cruel words Charles himself once spoke, "Farewell." He finishes the sentence, declaring that he prays he will never see him again. Charles cries out in pain and desperation as he is dragged away. His final pleas are for Alfred to save him. His pleas fall on deaf ears as he is consumed by the darkness, screaming for someone not to do this to him. He begs for the door to be opened, pleading for forgiveness as his voice fades into the encroaching darkness. As the portal to the Shadow Realm closes, Charles's desperate cries for Alfred echo one last time. Later that night, 2 hours after the demon's summoning, the teachers arrive to discover the horrifying truth of what transpired. A senior teacher stares in shock, wondering what could have happened. The others murmur in disbelief, questioning why students would attempt a demon summoning and spotting the corpse of a middle demon. Suddenly, one of them notices a lone figure huddled against the wall. He cries out for Mr. Clive. The spiky-haired teacher finds it strange that the students' belongings are all neatly lined up. He finds the scene inconsistent with a demon attack. The senior teacher approaches, furiously accusing Clive of taking a forbidden grimoire from the library and summoning a demon. As another teacher shakes Clive, demanding to know what happened, he is confronted. He berates Clive for his failure of duty, reminding him that the dead were all children of nobility from his own class. Another teacher presses for answers about the demon's fate, asking if Clive defeated it. Weakly, Clive reveals that Alfred was the one who defeated the middle demon. He recalls the students attempting the summoning. Clive remembers being paralyzed by the demon Deathblade's wave of fear and losing consciousness. A teacher explains they rushed over after being warned by students from another class. Coming to, Clive asks if Alfred is still alive. He privately concludes that Charles must have been eaten and the others escaped. Panic sets in as Clive realizes he's responsible for taking the grimoire and that all his students are dead. He steels himself, resolving to find a way out of this tight situation as he always has. He decides to fabricate a story and pin the blame on someone else, but his plotting is cut short when the head teacher's voice calls him an utter disappointment. Clive realizes the situation has spiraled far beyond anything he can control. The head teacher states grimly that he will be handed over to the authorities to face judgment. The punishment, he declares, will be beheading. The word hits Clive like a physical blow, his glasses falling and shattering. He numbly touches his own neck, whispering the sentence back to himself in disbelief. Clive's mind snaps, and he begins clawing at his throat in a fit of manic, uncontrollable laughter. As the other teachers look on, he collapses to the floor. Elsewhere that same day, a man with a monocle remarks on the terrible taste of his companion, Isabella. He points out that the captive children with them are only 12 years old. Isabella feigns innocence, claiming she is simply looking after poor, homeless children. The man dismisses her act, stating the obvious: she only takes beautiful young girls from the city to torture them relentlessly each night, a fact that is plain to see from their injuries. Isabella changes the subject, complaining that her upcoming trip to the Magic Academy is a drag. Her companion reminds her of their purpose. They are investigating the great sage Cedric, who is researching the logic of rebirth before his death. He reflects on how bizarre it was that Cedric accepted his poisoning so obediently. Isabella realizes he means it's possible Cedric actually succeeded in his research. The man theorizes Cedric was merely waiting for the right time to die, having found some assurance against true death. While the logic of rebirth suggests one would be reborn as a baby, they cannot be certain, and since he only died last year, they don't need to act just yet. He stresses the need to verify if the young sorcerer capable of powerful magic is indeed Cedric. If he succeeded, they would stand no chance against him once his powers fully matured, so they must nip this threat in the bud. Isabella agrees, though she feels he is worrying too much. She muses that if Cedric were still alive, he wouldn't approve of her hobbies. With the discussion over, she declares her intent to enjoy herself. Her companion allows it, telling her to go for it. Isabella turns her attention to a new girl among the captives. The girl flinches as Isabella approaches. She pours a glass of wine over her own foot and gives a simple, cruel command: lick it up. Growing impatient, Isabella tells the terrified girl to hurry. With no other choice, the girl kneels before her. She begins to lick the wine from Isabella's foot, much to the horned woman's amusement. Isabella shudders in ecstasy, thinking how glad she is that the bastard Cedric is finally dead, leaving her free to do as she pleases. She grabs the young girl's hand, calling her a good girl and telling her to follow. She leads the horrified girl into a room filled with instruments of torture. With a sadistic smile, Isabella welcomes her to her special room, promising they'll have some fun together. A servant named Simon informs his master that the incident with the demon has caused quite a stir, but a victory is still a victory, especially on the day of Alfred's celebration ceremony. Simon adds that Lady Isabella, one of the 3 holy sages and a leader of the Magic Guild, will be in attendance. Alfred's father smirks, considering his son a treasure for attracting such important attention. Lord Bale asks Simon if he, too, is moved by Alfred's development after so many years of service. Simon agrees, stating that after seeing the young master at his weakest, he is now in a state of ecstasy. His master admits he once misjudged his son, but now realizes he was wrong and that Alfred may become the greatest masterpiece the Bale household has ever produced. Lord Bale tells Simon he is counting on his future services. Simon tentatively brings up the fact that the young master was disowned, questioning if his master has considered Alfred's feelings. Lord Bale is taken aback by the question. His mood instantly sours, and he rebukes Simon for his disrespect in questioning a great noble. However, he declares that because he is in a good mood, he will overlook the failed decorum. Lord Bale dismisses the concern, stating that a commoner like Simon cannot understand the mind of a noble. He explains that for a disowned noble to return to a great household is like being lifted from the pits of garbage back to the heavens. With an unsettling grin, he concludes that Alfred will have no reason to be upset. Changing the subject, he mentions his desire to establish a connection with Lady Isabella and calls for someone to come in. A door opens in response to his call. A maid enters, and Lord Bale instructs her to prepare 5 gold bars and deliver a message. Simon is shocked by the order. He asks what his master is planning, as those funds were meant as famine relief for the starving farmers, whose situation is desperate. Lord Bale simply states that in the world of nobility, trust is the most important weapon in one's arsenal. He explains that sending a small gift is important before greeting others. Simon watches, horrified by his master's actions. He realizes the headmaster is being dismissed. The headmaster reflects on the many noble children who died, feeling that mere banishment is a light punishment for him. Alfred apologizes, noting that the headmaster agreed to his plan. The headmaster, however, takes full responsibility for allowing the servant class to exist in the first place. Alfred counters that it was the parents of the great nobles who forced the issue, leaving the headmaster with no choice. The headmaster insists he is still to blame, as he consented to the result. He confesses that when he first witnessed Alfred's power, he was deeply moved. He believed the young man could correct the academy's twisted path. He tells Alfred his success was a beautiful sight, accomplished much faster than imagined. Alfred tells him there is no need to speak so formally. The headmaster tells Alfred he is proud of the work he has done. Alfred recalls that the headmaster's specialty was magical toxic substances and asks about his most famous thesis, which the headmaster confirms. Alfred recites the title of the thesis concerning the neutralization of toxic substances with barrier magic, saying he found it an interesting read. The headmaster internally reflects that his polite language is a sign of respect for Alfred's worth. He is stunned that Alfred has read his thesis. He questions how a student could possibly comprehend it. Alfred then mentions that Theodore, the head of the Royal Knights of the Guard, is looking for a specialist in toxic substances. The headmaster is flabbergasted, asking how Alfred obtained such valuable information about the Royal Knights. Alfred simply replies that it was something he overheard. Their conversation is interrupted by the sounds of applause from the ceremony award hall. Inside the hall, students murmur about the incredible feat Alfred and his team accomplished, not only winning the title but also abolishing the class ranking system. A loud voice calls out to Alfred. It's his father congratulating him and declaring his pride. He tells Alfred that this is just the beginning. He must spread the Bale name even farther and show the world the superiority of their family. As Alfred stands silently, his father demands to know what's wrong, reminding him that common decorum dictates he should express gratitude. Instead of responding to him, Alfred turns and calls for Simon. He states that he has a question. Looking directly at his father, Alfred asks coldly, "Who's this?" The question hangs in the air, leaving his father utterly stunned and speechless. Alfred says he has memories of someone who looks like him, recalling the day he was told he was no longer his son. He remembers his father's absolute order to treat their existences as wholly unrelated and to blame only himself for his failures. He then walks past his father. Lord Bale trembles with rage, unable to believe his son would go so far as to ignore him. As his father seethes, Alfred remarks on the surprise. His attention is caught by a figure seated on a throne-like chair. He never thought he would cross paths with her again so quickly. It's Isabella. Headmaster Ammon announces that as their final reward, the team will receive personal remarks from Lady Isabella, one of the 3 holy sages. As she approaches, Isabella's attention focuses on one student in particular, identifying him as the rumored student Alfred who manifested atavism. Isabella leans in, studying Alfred with keen interest. He remains stoic under her intense gaze. Alfred finds the situation merely interesting. She admits her surprise. With a smirk, she remarks that he appears wholly unremarkable in every way. The blunt assessment sends a shockwave through the headmaster. Alfred calmly responds that Isabella hasn't changed, chiding her for forgetting his lesson about always being cautious and estimating an opponent's true strength. He points out that she hasn't even bothered to detect his magical concealment powers, calling her feeble for needing an official visit. Changing the subject, Isabella says she is taken with his looks and invites him to a soiree she is hosting. Isabella begins to ask for Alfred's father, the head of the Bale household. Lord Bale eagerly identifies himself as the parent representative. Isabella ignores his title, stating that she only wishes to borrow Alfred for the evening. Overjoyed, Lord Bale bows deeply and immediately agrees, telling her Alfred is hers for the taking. He sees this as a golden opportunity. Rumors suggest Isabella's soirees are extremely carnal in nature. If she and Alfred form a relationship, the Bale household standing within the Magic Guild would be boosted immensely. However, Alfred politely thanks Isabella for the invitation before declining. His father is aghast, yelling at Alfred for refusing a direct invitation from Lady Isabella herself. Alfred ignores him completely. Lord Bale seethes with rage, furious at being disregarded by his own son. As his father grinds his teeth in fury, shouting that this is unforgivable. Isabella asks Alfred for his reason. He explains that he lacks experience with women and fears his inexperience might displease her. Alfred then adds that if his inexperience is not an issue, he would happily attend. Isabella finds this amusing, commenting on the contrast between his impertinent gaze and adorable features, adding that she thought he was well versed in a woman's body. Isabella's expression hardens. If he is inexperienced, then she has no need for him. She thinks to herself that such men fold the moment they experience pleasure at her hand. Alfred had anticipated this outcome, confirming that Isabella's perversions remain and that she will now act with impunity. Isabella announces to the headmaster that her work is done and turns to leave. The headmaster tries to stop her, mentioning a feast prepared in her honor. She dismisses the offer, stating that such a paltry offering will not quench her thirst. As she walks away, Alfred turns to his friends, noting that he expected contact with the sages but asks if they ever thought they would be approached so directly. Alfred declares that the time has come for him to make his move. Thylos asks if he plans to challenge Isabella and the other 2 sages. Alfred replies that it's too early, as his current power is only a tenth of what it was in his prime. Thylos is stunned, recalling the incredibly powerful spells Alfred cast with only a tenth of his strength. He asks if Alfred thinks he can't beat them right now. Alfred clarifies that he has devised a method to trounce Isabella. Alfred explains that defeating Isabella would be a great gamble, leaving him unable to face the other 2. Therefore, he must first reclaim his prime power. He instructs Thylos to put in an absence request for the 3 of them, as they are heading north next. Thylos questions the need to involve Lisa. Alfred reveals a grim truth. Lisa's survival now requires his periodic maintenance. Without him, she will perish within 2 weeks. Thylos realizes the price for the power she gained is far heavier than he imagined, feeling a sense of responsibility. Just then, a cheerful Lisa approaches, oblivious to their serious conversation, and invites them to the buffet. Thylos observes that Lisa is completely unaware of her situation. Alfred finishes his meal and tells Thylos to handle things. He walks off, leaving Thylos alone with the unsuspecting girl. Lisa is shocked to learn that Al used his powers to save her from a 50% chance of death, finding it hard to accept. Thylos urges her to listen to the full story of why she is still alive. Lisa agrees to hear him out. Thylos then delivers the final, unbelievable truth. Alfred's true identity is that of the heavenly visitor and great sage, Sir Cedric. Lisa can only respond with a confused, huh. The realization finally hits her, and she lets out an earth-shattering scream of shock. Lisa struggles to comprehend the monumental truth she has just learned. Alfred is the legendary great sage, Sir Cedric. Her mind finally catches up, and she lets out an earth-shattering scream of disbelief. Thylos casually remarks that her reaction is to be expected, while Lisa tries to rationalize the unbelievable news. Alfred tells a stunned Lisa to pull herself together, but she insists her reaction is the only sane one. Thylos redirects the conversation, asking Alfred where they are headed. Alfred explains that they are going to visit an old acquaintance to prepare for an eventual showdown with Isabella. He feels a sense of urgency, needing to regain his power before Monsterkind's plans come to fruition. Thylos points out that Alfred had already claimed he could beat Isabella, so he needs to be in top shape for the fight. Alfred agrees that if they are to fight, there is a condition that must be met. With a look of intense resolve, Alfred states that any victory against her must be overwhelming, or it would be pointless. Having settled their course of action, the group makes their way out of the city. A clerk warns them that monster sightings are frequent this season, suggesting they travel with a merchant band for protection. Alfred coolly accepts the terms, unconcerned by the danger. Inside their carriage, Alfred, Lisa, and Thylos begin their journey. Their caravan travels through a vast, mountainous landscape. Inside, Lisa looks out the window and notes that the sky is becoming overcast. As the carriage rumbles, Alfred informs them that they have just entered the domain of the dragon people. The caravan approaches the northern border area of Valnoras. Lisa nervously asks if the region is safe, recalling rumors of a past attack on the capital. Thylos explains that the area has been much calmer since Sir Cedric's victory over the dragon Mikaldra, and he tells a timid Lisa to relax. Lisa reflects on the incredible reality of her journey with a historical legend. Lisa is reminded of her own dream to become a great sorcerer, inspired by the very person she's traveling with. Thylos clarifies that despite the relative peace, Valnoras is not truly safe. He explains that after Mikaldra's fall, humans started preying on the dragon people, prompting a confused Lisa to ask for more details. Thylos describes how humans steal dragon stones, rendering the dragon people powerless, and selling them into slavery for high prices. Alfred notes that without their tyrannical leader, the battle-hardened dragon people are now being targeted. Thylos reveals that his sources indicate Isabella is leading this cruel hunt. Thylos reveals that captured dragon people are taken to Isabella's manor and tortured. Lisa finds this awful, while Alfred is furious that Isabella is pursuing her own sick pleasures. He declares with cold fury that Isabella is truly beyond salvation. The carriage screeches to a sudden stop. The jolt sends Lisa tumbling from her seat. Thylos senses that trouble has found them. The mercenary leader rushes out, yelling for the novices to remain in the carriage. From outside, a mercenary explains that a horde of monsters is blocking their path forward. The mercenary leader cracks his knuckles, eager to put on a show for his employers. He dismissively tells the Magic Academy students to stay out of their way. The approaching enemy is identified as a large group of orcs. Lisa frets that students can't possibly fight these creatures, but then remembers who Al truly is. She internally facepalms, realizing the mercenary is acting like a fool in front of a living legend. Alfred calmly agrees to let the mercenaries handle it, but offers their assistance if required. The mercenary leader laughs him off, telling him to stay out of the way before leading the charge. The mercenary leader's face turns to one of pure shock. The mercenaries panic as they realize they are facing a powerful Orksa warlord. The leader declares they are not equipped to fight such a monster and retreats. With the mercenaries in disarray, Thylos prepares to unleash 8th-tier magic. He leaps into the air and unleashes a powerful spell known as Celestial Fire. The spell rains down from the sky, decimating the orc horde. The mercenary leader is stunned, unable to comprehend the use of 8th-tier magic. Alfred calmly asks Thylos about his new ability, and Thylos replies that he is still in the testing phase. The ground is left scarred by the immense power of the spell. The mercenary leader can't believe what he's just witnessed, questioning how it's even possible. The ground shakes as the massive Orc Emperor makes its appearance. Alfred acknowledges Thylos's testing phase and his understanding of his own limits. He then declares his intent to show them what true 8th-tier magic looks like. Facing the colossal Orc Emperor, Alfred calmly stands his ground and unleashes his own spell, aerial tempest. A massive wave of force washes over the battlefield. The mercenary leader and the others can only wonder what just happened. The Orc Emperor is struck by an unseen force. In an instant, the colossal beast is shredded by the powerful magic. Thylos is left completely stunned by the sheer power and precision of the spell. Alfred turns to Thylos, explaining that this is the truly elegant way to cast such powerful magic. Meanwhile, the mercenaries left behind by the trio gather around a fire, still in awe of what they witnessed. Their leader recounts how Alfred sliced the Orc Emperor in two, frustrated that he can't figure out who the mysterious travelers are. Another mercenary chimes in, equally vexed, saying they've tried to talk to them but can never seem to find them. Unbeknownst to the mercenaries, Alfred, Thylos, and Lisa are hidden nearby. Alfred has erected a magical barrier, sealing them off from the outside world within a half-mile radius and rendering them undetectable. With their privacy secured, Thylos announces it is time to begin Lisa's training regimen. Lisa pushes herself through a grueling exercise, counting into the high hundreds. She performs a form of exercise called a burpee. As she moves, she casts a fireball spell. She understands the purpose of the exercise is to forge a connection between her mind and her magic circuit, allowing her to cast spells instinctively. After completing her 1000th repetition, Lisa thinks that being asked to do 10,000 as a mere warm-up is insane. She shakily asks Thylos for a break. As she catches her breath, Lisa laments how out of shape she is, but Thylos encourages her, pointing out she's made amazing progress since she needed a break every 100 reps at the start. Curious, Lisa asks where Al is. Thylos explains that he's inside another barrier within their own, performing the same 10,000 burpees, but while simultaneously casting the extreme tier magic, Meteor Fall. Just then, Alfred emerges from his barrier, remarking on how tiring the exercise is. Lisa is stunned, realizing he finished 10 times faster than her. With his own warm-up complete, Alfred turns to Lisa and declares they're kicking her training up a notch. He explains that since she has an aptitude for defensive magic, they will work on strengthening it. To demonstrate, he prepares to show her an example. Alfred unleashes a dazzling display of 8th tier magic called Sword Waltz, a whirlwind of blades moving with deadly grace. The spell freezes in place. Alfred explains to a bewildered Lisa that the point of the training is to be constantly protected by defensive magic, ready for an attack at any time. He elaborates that while evasion is key, she must be able to protect herself if she takes a hit, warning that even a slight lapse in concentration could lead to serious injury. As Thylos chuckles that this is no normal training, Lisa can only stare in horror. Alfred continues, outlining the next step. She will be dropped from 1,600 feet and must use wind magic to save herself just before impact to teach her to react instinctively. Lisa pleads with him, asking if they might be taking things too far, but Alfred doesn't think so. He casually mentions that this was his own training regimen when he was just 9 years old, causing Lisa to cry out not to be compared to a great sage. Thylos concedes that it might be too much for her, but Alfred counters, asking if Lisa's resolve is like that of others. Alfred states confidently that he knows she can do it, which is why he explained the brutal training in the first place. His words trigger a memory for Lisa, reminding her of her past weakness. The memory steals her resolve. With newfound determination, Lisa shouts that she'll do it. If this is what it takes to get stronger, she will give it her all. Alfred grins, calling it an elegant proclamation. Thylos suggests postponing any training that could lead to grave injury. Alfred agrees, but then mischievously offers a regimen he designed when he was 6 instead. He then grows serious, reminding them they arrive at Valnora's tomorrow and won't be able to train once they enter. For the rest of the day, they must give it everything they have. In another part of the world, a man named Bale meets with Lady Isabella. She presents him with a case full of gold, saying she wants him to remember her. After confirming his name, she asks about his jurisdiction. Learning that Valnora's is under his control, Isabella smiles, calling the situation perfect. She then gives him an order: prepare an area for her to go dragon hunting, effective immediately. Bale is horrified, realizing she intends to enslave dragon people again. He recalls the trouble they went through to cover up the last incident. He protests, stating that the Emperor has not given permission for such an activity. Bale adds that the Royal Knights are still cracking down on such cases. Isabella merely snickers, mockingly saying she thought he wanted her to remember him. She repeats her command one last time: do it now. Defeated, Bale agrees, silently cursing the foul woman. Isabella reassures him that he will be rewarded if he proves useful, then announces their departure for the north. As a subordinate stammers in surprise, Isabella insults him. She repeats her order a third and final time, her patience clearly gone. They look out over a vast, sun-drenched valley, the road to their next destination stretching before them. Having parted ways with the mercenaries, Alfred, Thylos, and Lisa continue their journey. A messenger bird arrives for Alfred, bringing news from the headmaster. He smiles, reading the scroll. Everything is proceeding as he planned. The headmaster has secured an important role within the Royal Knights of the Guard, a position where he will be of great use to Captain Theodore. Alfred's expression hardens, reminding them of his ultimate goal, to defeat the monster kind that has subjugated humanity. However, he knows now is not the time to act openly, as the royal court is rotten to its core. First, he must deal with the three great sages and the corrupt court. Alfred explains that Theodore is one of the few men he trusts, and he needs to send him talented individuals to help him move freely. With Cedric dead, the Emperor is fighting alone, so Alfred resolves to hurry to Valnora's and reclaim his powers to aid him. Thylos, amazed by the scale of Alfred's plans, asks about the individual he knows in Valnora's. As Alfred begins to explain, a sudden explosion in the distance cuts him off. Lisa spots a column of smoke rising from a nearby settlement. She wonders if Valnora's is on fire, but Alfred clarifies that their destination is still farther away. Thylos identifies the area as the home of the lizard men, a race of lower dragon people. He finds the fighting bizarre, stating the peaceful race would never pick up a weapon unless they were being attacked by an outside force. A lizardman cries out in pain before being cut down by a fully armored knight. The trio watches in shock as the brutal slaughter unfolds. As more lizardmen fall, Lisa observes that the knights appear to be instigating the conflict. A flicker of recognition crosses Alfred's face as he realizes who is behind the attack. Bale laughs maniacally amidst the carnage, declaring his forces unstoppable. His butler, Simon, stands by in silent disapproval. Internally, Bale seethes, cursing Isabella for forcing him onto this battlefield. He fumes that she specifically ordered him to attack the lizard men, despite other routes to Valnora's. He feels he is being treated like a mere servant, despite being the head of the Bale household. Bale shouts in frustration, refusing to be underestimated. Simon cautiously suggests that they still have time to pull back and correct this misstep. Bale scoffs at the idea, calling it ridiculous. Simon protests that there is no moral cause for the attack, calling the massacre of the lizard men a crime. Bale retorts that he is well aware, which is why his family name won't be mentioned, framing it as a necessary evil to secure Isabella's backing. He claims their deeds will go unpunished as always. Furious at being questioned, Bale reveals that Simon's presence is a punishment for him. The punishment is for his failure to raise Alfred into a proper son. He mocks the old butler, a once famous magic swordsman, and tells him this is his chance to prove his fealty on the battlefield. Having reached his breaking point, Simon announces he can no longer endure this. After faithfully serving the household, he formally resigns from his position as butler, shocking his master. Simon turns and flees on horseback, filled with regret that he was unable to care for young Master Alfred until the end. As he rides away, he decides the boy no longer needs his attention. His escape is cut short when something unseen stops his horse in its tracks. Bale's knights appear, blocking his path. They inform Simon that their master has ordered them to slay those who are of no use to him. His dereliction of duty and foolish resignation have incurred Bale's anger. Simon is aghast that his years of dutiful service mean nothing, and that simply angering Bale is reason enough for a death sentence. The knight confirms that upsetting their master is the gravest crime of all. Realizing the depths of depravity Bale has sunk to, Simon's face contorts in rage. Ripping his jacket, Simon prepares for battle, declaring that the title of Offenbridge's demon is his. Though his swordsmanship has rusted with time, he is confident he can defeat them with magic. Drawing his sword, which now crackles with power, Simon readies himself. He thinks of the young master, his one final request being the chance to greet him one last time. Suddenly, a figure lands with tremendous force on the bridge behind the knights. It's Alfred, who asks, "Did you call for me, Simon?" Simon stares in disbelief, stunned to see the young master here. He tries to warn Alfred that the troops belong to House Bale. But Alfred cuts him off, stating calmly that these men attacked the lizard men's settlement. Alfred turns to the knights with a chilling smile. He concludes that if he, a mere passerby and good Samaritan, were to erase their existence from the earth, there would be no issue to be had. Alfred jests that Simon's appearance has become quite burly in his absence, asking if his assistance was not required. Simon is in awe, realizing that Alfred instantly killed all the knights. Simon, wiping away a tear, tells his young master how proud he is of the wonderful man he has become. Alfred smiles, telling Simon he only did so because he had his support. Alfred bids Simon farewell, stating that while their paths will diverge, he will never forget his gratitude. Simon asks to accompany him, but Alfred tells him not to overexert himself. Alfred's expression hardens as he thinks to himself that the path before him is laden with blood. The knights hunt down the fleeing lizardmen, motivated by Lord Algren's promise of a double reward for the one who kills the most. Two knights argue over who will claim the prize, boasting about their kill counts. The leader of the knights walks forward, callously referring to the victims as loud beasts. A lizardman mother shields her child, pleading for their lives. The man dismisses her plays, calling them fools. He prepares to strike them down without a shred of remorse. His name is Marcus Ironwill, and he has devoted his entire life to swordsmanship. He defeated school after school until he was finally granted the title of Alien Blade Master. He recalls felling over 100 men and taking great pride in his fame. However, a single loss on the battlefield cost him his reputation, and now he is nothing more than a hired hand for a noble. One of his men calls out, having spotted more survivors. Marcus laments that this is a foolish deed and that he now only takes the lives of others for money. His senses flare as he detects the casting of extreme-tier magic. A figure descends from above, landing with purpose amidst the chaos. Stunned, Marcus can only wonder who in the hell this newcomer is. Alfred points a single finger towards his target. A powerful magic circle begins to form at his command. The spell charges with a deafening screech, ready to be unleashed. He unleashes the spell, Longinus Bullet, a massive spiraling beam of energy that hurtles directly towards the shocked Marcus. The powerful spell is intercepted before it can reach Marcus. The knights are stunned, wondering who just appeared and attacked Sir Marcus. While one knight angrily challenges Alfred, another recognizes their opponent's strength and insists they cannot win. One knight charges, convinced that a mere kid cannot possibly defeat a knight of House Bale. Alfred easily dodges the attack, thinking it amusing that a knight of his former house wouldn't recognize him. He strikes back with a devastating kick to the knight's head. The knight is sent flying with immense force, crashing into a wall in the distance. The other knights can only stare in shock, wondering how far he was sent. Alfred coolly states that his opponent was nothing more than a mob, after all. The remaining knights rally, gathering to face Alfred together. Their leader shouts defiantly, claiming they can win with sheer numbers, regardless of Alfred's strength. Alfred is unimpressed, stating that their gathering has only saved him the time of having to search for them. He moves with incredible speed, taking down multiple knights before they can react. One knight spots an opening and prepares to strike Alfred from behind. Alfred pivots instantly, dodging the attack from behind. The knight is shocked, asking if Alfred has eyes in the back of his head. Alfred counters, asking if the knight truly believed he couldn't be seen, as he delivers a powerful punch. The battle was over in a paltry 30 seconds, ending with the death of all knights present. Alfred stands alone amidst the bodies, acknowledging the scene as a true bloodbath. The scene shifts to the House Balial encampment. A knight darts into Algren Balial's tent, urgently calling for his master. Algren casually asks if his butler is finally dead or if the lizardmen's settlement has fallen. The knight reports that all the troops dispatched to the south side of the lizardmen's settlement have been utterly annihilated. Algren is left utterly speechless by the shocking news. The knights are shocked by the sudden appearance of more powerful children, wondering where they came from. Lisa unleashes a powerful 5th-tier spell, Storm Tempest, sending one of the knights flying. Feeling stronger than ever, Lisa is thrilled with her progress. Her excitement turns to shock as she realizes what Thylos is about to do. Thylos unleashes an overwhelming 7th-tier Extreme Storm Tempest, dwarfing her own spell. Thylos congratulates Lisa on her progress, and she shyly points out that his own display was far more impressive. Lisa then turns her gaze towards Alfred, acknowledging him as the most impressive of them all. Alfred confirms that the last of the enemy forces are gone, but senses a new arrival. Lord Algren Balial appears with his guard, enraged to discover that the one responsible for the carnage is his own son. Alfred greets his father with cold formality, calling him Lord Balial. Algren seethes with rage at his son's disrespectful tone. Alfred sarcastically remarks on the mystery of finding a noble household lurking behind a group of thugs. Algren furiously accuses his son of lambasting him. Alfred calmly retorts that his father's despicable actions deserve criticism. Algren roars that Alfred has defied his own household by annihilating his troops. Alfred coldly refutes this, stating they merely stopped a group of villains from attacking the lizardmen. Algren slams his fist down, demanding an end to the excuses. Alfred asks if his father would willingly confess his crimes and accept punishment from the Emperor, leaving Algren speechless. Regaining his composure, Algren looks down on his son, calling him pitiful. Alfred questions the sudden change in his father's assessment of him. Algren declares his intention to seclude Alfred in the manor for treatment to cure his abhorrent illness. Algren issues an order for Alfred to return to the manor immediately and await his return. He warns that this re-education may involve forbidden magic, such as brainwashing spells. Algren admits that while such methods could turn his son into a puppet, he's willing to take that risk. Lisa is horrified, declaring that a parent should never do something so terrible. Alfred, however, remains unnervingly calm in the face of the threat. After a moment of silence, Alfred poses a single, pointed question to his father. The insult sends Algren into a rage, shocked that his son would call him inept. Alfred realizes his father is trapped in the old belief that children must obey their parents. He explains that true power is the strength to enforce one's will. Alfred declares that between the two of them, his party possesses the greater fighting power. Alfred casts Gravity Boost, slamming his father to his knees, and tells him to speak now that he understands his true position. Algren struggles, cursing his son for using magic to force him down. He's shocked by the overwhelming power of what should be a simple fourth-tier spell. Alfred tells his father he'll accept his challenge if he can even move. Enraged, Algren vows to kill Alfred with his bare hands. Alfred calmly invites him to come and attack. Just as the conflict is about to escalate, Simon arrives on horseback, pleading for his young master to stop. He cries out that he never wanted to see a father and son try to kill one another. Alfred is stunned that Simon came all this way for him. Alfred reflects that he cannot refuse a request from the man who raised him for over a decade. He decides to relent just this once. He tells his father he should thank Simon for his life, but warns that he will still report the incident to the royal knights. Algren continues to yell, furious that a pitiful child would talk back to his father. Alfred points out that his father started it and declares they are no longer parent and child. He raises his finger, preparing a final parting shot. A blast of energy shoots past Algren's head, searing off part of his ear. He screams in pain and collapses to the ground. Alfred warns him to understand that Simon saved his life and not to attack his family again. With a chilling stare, Alfred gives his final warning: there will be no second chances and the next shot will be aimed at his heart. Alfred and his friends turn to leave. Algren struggles to his feet, clutching his wounded ear. He screams empty threats, vowing to use Lady Isabella to purge his son from existence. Lady Isabella finds the situation hilarious, remarking that she has not laughed so hard in a long time. Algren pleads with her, insisting that the fact remains that his son interfered with their hunt. He furiously declares that, as far as he is concerned, that thing is no longer his son. He asks that Isabella be the one to end Alfred's life. Isabella says she has no interest in a family squabble, but agrees to his request. She confirms with Algren that Alfred will be in the Valnora's region for a while, seeing the timing as perfect for her to finish him off. However, she demands he summon his entire military might from his lands. Algren is shocked by the request, questioning why all his forces are needed for a single child. Isabella explains that the troops are not for his son, but for her own plans, which are based on information she tortured out of a dragon person. A memory surfaces of a man who once served a difficult old master. Isabella reveals this man was Sir Cedric, the late commander-in-chief of the Magic Guild. The story she heard was that Sir Cedric hid something in the remains of Mikaldra's ruined castle. Isabella states that having extra hands is helpful for a search and orders him to gather his troops. Algren begins to protest, saying this only serves her personal desires. She cuts him off, reminding him that he came to her seeking advice because he wanted his son dead. One of Isabella's attendants reminds Algren that their world operates on exchange and he must offer something in return for his request. Algren realizes with frustration that his attempt to use her has backfired and now he is the one being used. Isabella privately considers that if her intel is accurate, the old man used the dragon's remains as a safe haven for something important. She sees this as a delicious opportunity to gain an upper hand on her two rivals. Isabella's ultimate goal comes into focus. If she alone can gain the acknowledgement of monsterkind, she will be able to succeed the currently vacant position of Commander-in-Chief of the Magic Guild. Lisa asks where they are, having traveled far from Valnora's. Alfred explains it is the castle of the Dragon King Mikuldra. Thylos observes that the castle is now nothing more than crumbling debris. Confused, Lisa asks Alfred why they are here instead of with the other dragon people in Valnora's. Alfred decides it would be more interesting if they figured it out themselves and asks for their theories. Lisa accepts the challenge and begins to recap everything she knows. She recalls that Mikuldra was a terrible dragon that Alfred, as Sir Cedric, defeated in his past life. She speculates they are here to recover a powerful artifact once possessed by the dragon in order to reclaim Alfred's former powers. Alfred informs her that all such artifacts have already been requisitioned by the Magic Guild. Lisa suddenly remembers that Alfred mentioned someone was holding on to something for him. He then reveals their true destination, a dragon people altar located beneath the castle. Thylos recalls rumors of a ritualistic site, concluding that an altar must be where the soul of the ancient dragon people king rests. Alfred explains that Mikuldra, believing he had surpassed the ancient king, arrogantly built his castle atop the sacred altar, making it hard to access. He adds that with Mikuldra's death, the land is liberated, and the altar rituals have been revived. The group stands before a large archway that Alfred says leads to the underground area. Thylos remembers hearing of trials at the ancient king's resting place where only those with acknowledged power could enter. Alfred agrees, noting this was fine by him as it kept ordinary people away. He reveals he hid something essential for recovering his power, and it now rests with the dragon's remains. Lisa begins to understand the significance of this place. Lisa presses Alfred, reminding him he said someone was holding on to something for him. Thylos notes the creepy set of stairs leading further down. Alfred smiles, promising to provide answers to all of their inquiries. A fiery figure suddenly appears before them, blocking their path. It introduces itself as Ifrit, the spirit of flame, and questions why humans would dare trespass on these sacred lands. Alfred calmly states that he knows humans have visited before, so as long as he has power, it should not be a problem. Ifrit retorts that while some have visited, they were great heroes, not children unworthy of its breath. The spirit orders them to turn back before they experience true shame. Alfred simply repeats his point, with power there is no problem. Ifrit challenges the child to show him this power he speaks of. It boasts that the gates behind it are sealed by a barrier that no amount of pathetic power could ever open. Alfred simply says all right and prepares himself. He tosses a few small, glowing pebbles into the air. As Ifrit starts to ask what he is doing, Alfred casually taps his foot. The pebbles shoot forward, striking the gate and unleashing a massive explosion of power. As the gate crumbles, Alfred apologizes, explaining he added extra power because he's weaker now and did not think he would destroy it. He casually wonders if the gates were always this brittle. The stunned Ifrit can only look on from the side. Ifrit is left utterly speechless, its mind blown by the casual display of overwhelming force. As the dust settles from the destruction of the gates, the flame spirit Ifrit is left in utter shock. It recalls that the gates were forged from adamantine. To destroy them, one would need to wield at least 8th-tier magic, meaning this boy possesses power comparable to that of a human hero. Unfazed, Alfred reminds the spirit that there should be 3 trials in total. Stating that they are in a hurry, he politely asks Ifrit to guide them to the next one. Internally, Ifrit panics, unsure of what to do next. Ifrit is conflicted. Normally, anyone who could break the gates would be qualified to visit the altar, but it would be a problem to allow anyone but a dragon person through. Its orders are absolute, no humans are allowed through. Feeling it has no choice against such power, the spirit relents and tells them to follow. It decides to lead them down the forbidden path of trials, a route designed to keep invaders away. Ifrit leads the group into a large chamber, announcing that this room is a test of wisdom. Alfred calmly accepts the challenge. The spirit explains that they must use the correct techniques to activate the magic circle and unlock its seal, or the gate to the next room will not open. To prevent further damage to the sacred lands, Ifrit forbids the use of brute force. Thylos studies the magic circle intently. Alfred turns to Thylos, asking if he recognizes it. Ifrit smirks, confident that they'll never comprehend a design from a magical civilization lost 3,000 years ago. Alfred immediately identifies the circle as being from ancient Belshire, shocking Ifrit. Thylos confirms that with some time, he believes he could undo the seal. Alfred asks how long it would take. Thylos estimates it would take him about 5 days to fully analyze and verify the technique. Efreet asks Lisa if Alfred also knew the circle's origin, but she clarifies that Thylos is simply very well learned. The spirit muses that while it's surprising for children to have such knowledge, rare child geniuses must exist. However, Alfred stands up, calling the trial's problem inelegant. Alfred explains that Efreet's instruction to activate the circle was meant to mislead them. The true answer is to add a single stroke to the unfinished magic circle, which will complete it and lift the seal. As the gate creaks open, the trial is passed. Thylos expresses his admiration for his master, while Alfred calls the puzzle a worn-out tactic of the ancient dragon people. Both Efreet and Lisa are left dumbfounded, wondering who these two truly are. Before them lies a narrow, unsteady path over a dark chasm. Efreet announces the next trial, a test of courage. Alfred correctly deduces that falling from the path would mean plunging into the pits of hell. The spirit adds that a special barrier along the path will also interfere with their mental state. Efreet explains that the barrier will force them to recall the worst fears they have ever encountered. It taunts them, questioning if they can make it across while gripped by ultimate fear. Without hesitation, Alfred steps onto the path to face the chains of despair. Efreet is shocked, thinking this is suicide. The spirit is certain that no human can win against despair and that Alfred will fall. As the magic activates, Efreet waits for the inevitable. It expects Alfred to be overcome with fear. But as Alfred calmly walks, Efreet realizes his expression hasn't changed in the slightest. The spirit grows frantic, demanding he at least furrow his brow. It stares in disbelief at Alfred's completely unfazed and almost bored expression. Alfred reaches the other side of the path. He declares the trial a letdown. A stunned Efreet demands to know how he maintained his composure in the face of his deepest fears. Alfred explains that he was actually excited to see what sort of mental contamination he would suffer as he crossed. Leaning against the wall, Alfred states frankly that he felt nothing. Apparently there is nothing that he fears, which he finds a shame. Efreet is utterly terrified, realizing there is something deeply wrong with this boy. He is no normal human child. Alfred presses on, stating that since they're in a hurry, they should quickly finish the final trial. Efreet confirms the last test is one of fighting prowess, meaning they must battle. Alfred readily agrees, saying he doesn't mind fighting right here and now. Terrified at the prospect of fighting Alfred, Efreet laughs nervously. It quickly declares that as a special, one-time deal, it will grant all three of them an exception to the battle. Efreet panics internally, knowing it could never win against a monster like Alfred. Alfred accepts the offer and asks to be guided to the altar, but the spirit remembers its orders not to let humans pass. It frets over being killed by its superior for this failure. Suddenly, a calm voice tells Efreet to give it up. A woman with an ornate mask appears. Efreet whirls around in shock, addressing her as Lady Ophelia, who states that she noticed what was going on and came to see for herself. Efreet despairs, remembering Lady Ophelia's orders to never allow humans to reach the altar. It believes she has grown impatient with its failures and has come to eliminate the intruders herself. The spirit is certain this is the end for both itself and the children. However, Alfred simply greets Ophelia casually, saying it's been a long time. Ophelia looks at Alfred, her expression unreadable, and confirms that it is indeed him. She then addresses him by a different name, revealing she has long awaited the return of Sir Cedric. Thylos looks on in confusion, asking Alfred who the mysterious woman is. Alfred casually introduces her as Ophelia, a vampire. Lisa reacts with shock, recognizing the name from fairy tales. Lisa is stunned that Ophelia is a figure from legends, one who transformed from a human into a vampire. Alfred explains that she was the ex-wife of Mikaldra and that he originally intended to defeat her as well. However, after speaking with her, he realized she was a good person, unlike her cruel husband. Alfred concludes that after making a few things clear to Ophelia, she agreed to serve under his command. The revelation leaves Lisa speechless. Thylos is equally stunned by this turn of events. Ophelia blushes intensely at the memory of their arrangement. Alfred smirks, fully aware of the impact his words have. A curious Lisa tentatively approaches Ophelia to ask her a question. Lisa asks Ophelia what exactly Alfred made clear to her. With a happy, blushing smile, Ophelia confirms that he did about 2 years ago. Lisa is internally terrified by the vampire's unrestrained expression. Ophelia tells Lisa and Thylos that as Master Cedric's companions, they should feel free to speak with her casually, leaving Lisa flustered. Alfred tells the group to try and get along, reassuring them that Ophelia is harmless. He adds that this is because he made things clear to her, which only deepens Lisa's bewilderment about what he could have possibly done. Efreet is having an internal crisis, realizing it was rude to someone Ophelia serves. The spirit bows deeply, begging Alfred to forgive its unsightly manners. Alfred simply asks why it is apologizing. Efreet explains it was unaware of his acquaintance with Lady Ophelia and had been incredibly inhospitable. Alfred states that Efreet was only doing its job of guarding the gates and following Ophelia's orders, for which he finds no fault. However, he adds with a grin that its attempts to intimidate intruders could use some work. The unexpected praise and teasing cause the powerful spirit to blush. Efreet bows again, vowing to devote itself to improvement. Watching this, Thylos reflects that both Efreet, a high-ranking spirit, and Ophelia, a godlike vampire, revere Alfred. Thylos realizes his master's existence is far beyond what he had ever imagined. Thylos wonders just how unfathomably great Master Al truly is. Alfred turns to Ophelia, stating he has come to collect what he left in her care. She understands and gestures for them to follow her. As they walk, Alfred asks Ophelia if something has happened, and she admits she is in a tight situation. She explains that she used her information network to monitor Isabella, who has been hunting Valnoras. Through this, she learned that Isabella and the forces of the Baleal household are on their way here. The name of the Baleal household gives Alfred pause. He recalls sparing one of them out of respect for someone named Simon, thinking of him as a pitiful man. Ophelia stops them before a large, ornate door, announcing they have arrived. She explains that, as he requested, she has preserved Mikaldra's remains inside. The doors open to reveal a grand hall with an altar at the far end. Ophelia presents the object on the altar, the enormous petrified head of a dragon. Lisa and Thylos are horrified, questioning Alfred for making Ophelia manage the remains of her former husband. Alfred clarifies that Mikaldra defeated her and forced her into marriage. Ophelia adds with a terrifying smile that she is grateful, as his remains make the perfect decoration for the altar. Lisa asks what Alfred left here. He explains it is a magic tool of the dragon people, reminding them of his explanation of dragon stones. He touches the dragon's head, explaining that dragon stones are crystallizations of magic. However, one from a dragon of Mikaldra's caliber can store enormous amounts of magic, including that of others. Alfred reveals that while perfecting his rebirth magic, he sealed away about half of his own power within this very dragon stone. He declares it is time to take back what is his. As he pulls the crystal from the dragon's head, a blinding flash of energy erupts through the hall. Thylos struggles against the wild stream of magic. He notes its explosive force is unlike anything he's ever felt, rivaling wind magic. Alfred, satisfied, announces he has regained about 60% of his former power. He examines the crystal, noting that even with his magic removed, Mikaldra's dragonstone is still potent enough to turn others into dragons. Ophelia notices his thoughtful expression and asks if something is the matter. Alfred recalls what she said about the dragon people being in a tight spot due to Isabella's hunting. A smile creeps across his face as an idea forms. Seeing this, Ophelia giggles, asking if he's thought of something. With a confident smirk, Alfred confirms that he has. He knows just how to make Isabella see the light. Lisa is aghast at Alfred's claim that he will make Isabella see the light. Thylos silently wonders what kind of plan Alfred has in mind that would not only defeat her, but also change her ways. Ophelia looks on with a sudden expression of fear. She shudders, her eye wide with terror. Letting out a terrified shriek, she recoils. Lisa calls out Ophelia's name in concern as the powerful vampire collapses to the ground. Shaking, Ophelia stammers that an intruder has appeared. A small white snake slithers towards the altar, seemingly the cause of her distress. Lisa and Thylos are stunned that the cause of the commotion is a snake. Thylos realizes she is reacting to this regular old snake. He observes that she seems genuinely terrified by it. Lisa, who had been nervous, finds this vulnerable side of Ophelia to be quite adorable and giggles to herself. Ophelia apologizes for her disgraceful display, as Alfred asks if she is uneasy around snakes. She admits to having developed a strong dislike for them since an incident 2 years ago. She explains that this fear is because Master Cedric used one when he made things clear to her. Lisa is horrified, wondering what Alfred did to etch such a fear into Ophelia. Alfred casually reminisces that he did indeed use a snake back then. He picks up the snake, saying it takes him back. Seeing him hold it, a terrified Ophelia asks what he intends to do. With a mischievous grin, Alfred tells her the snake simply wishes to see her face up close. Ophelia lets out a prolonged scream of terror as Alfred playfully teases her with the snake. Lisa remarks that Alfred is acting like a rascal, while Thylos suggests it might be a side effect of being relieved from his heavy burdens. With the teasing over, Alfred announces it is time to head to Valnora's and that they will first visit the chieftain. With a determined expression, he declares they are going to make preparations to repel Isabella's incoming forces. Their destination is the dragon people's fortified village, Valnora's. In the village hall, Alfred explains to the chieftain, Villonen, that Isabella is leading a massive force toward them. Villonen slams his fist on the table in despair, proclaiming they are doomed. He laments that without their stolen dragon stones, they have no hope against one of the three holy sages. Alfred tells the chieftain it is too early to give up and to hear him out first. He reminds Villonen that humans were not the only ones who took their dragon stones. Alfred recalls how the tyrannical Mikaldra had seized them 2 years ago to forge an amalgamation. He then places Mikaldra's dragonstone on the table, suggesting this changes things and leaving Villonen stunned. Alfred instructs Villonen to shatter the dragonstone and return the stolen powers to his warriors, confident they can then handle the human army. The chieftain remains fearful of Isabella and her aides, but Alfred reassures him, mentioning his own reliable comrades. Alfred declares that he and his companions will handle Isabella, leaving the Valnora's warriors to neutralize her forces. He promises that once this is over, the atrocities against dragon people will end for good. The chieftain reluctantly agrees to the plan. However, Villonen is still bothered by Alfred's attitude and demands to know who this human thinks he is. Villonen states he only permitted Alfred to speak freely because he assumed him to be Ophelia's servant. He reminds Alfred of his own status as chieftain of the proud dragon people. Villonen adds that disrespecting King Mikaldra is unheard of, regardless of his tyranny. The chieftain angrily demands that the young human show proper respect to his superiors. Ophelia steps in, coldly telling Villonen that it is he who needs to learn respect for his superiors. A shocked Villonen calls out her name as she informs him that his assumption about Alfred was completely wrong. Ophelia reveals Alfred's true identity. He is her master, the heavenly visitor, great sage Cedric. As Villonen stands utterly speechless, Ophelia apologizes to Alfred, who asks her to be more subtle next time. Meanwhile, on the highway leading to Valnora's, a carriage travels at speed. Inside, Isabella's subordinate comments on the superb force they've assembled, while Isabella complains about the noise. He notes that their army includes the Baleal household's main forces and additional mercenaries. The man proudly states their army is over 1,000 men strong, filling the road. Isabella remarks that she is impressed, having assumed he could only muster about half that number. Isabella tells him it is only right to treat her loyal hound to a snack for a job well done. The man is internally shocked that she still sees him as a hound. She offers him a recommendation for the vacant Grand Magic Instructor position, an offer he can't believe. He is ecstatic, realizing the fame this prestigious position would bring him. He worries that other guild members might oppose his appointment. Isabella asks if he is dissatisfied with her treat, preparing to do something. With a snap of her fingers, she magically gives him a new set of animal ears. She chuckles that it replaces the one he had blown off. She assures him she will silence any opposition and that he will receive more treats if he remains obedient. Isabella looks down at him with a commanding gaze, telling him to make sure he barks at her every command. Enraged but subservient, he lets out a loud bark. Isabella muses that her slave quarters have felt roomy lately, perhaps because she killed too many in her boredom. With a cruel smile, she decides that once they reach Valnora's, it will be time to hunt for more slaves. Alfred observes the gathered dragon people, assuming there would not be many left. He questions if this small, downtrodden group is truly all that remains of the warriors of Valnora's. His stare alone is enough to send one of the men into a panic, who screams for the human to stay away from him. Alfred turns to Villonen, demanding an explanation for the warriors' behavior. The chieftain explains that the men have been broken by the mental scars from King Mikaldra's tyranny and Lady Isabella's slave hunts. Taking this in, Alfred turns to Ophelia and asks for an estimate on Isabella's arrival. Ophelia reports that according to her scattered shadows, it will take Isabella's forces roughly 4 more days to arrive. Alfred processes this information, deciding that 4 days is enough. He tells Villonen that he will be borrowing his men. The chieftain agrees but asks what he intends to do with them. Alfred grabs one of the terrified warriors, retorting that his intention should be obvious. He declares with grim determination that he is going to rebuild their self-esteem from the ground up and make them into worthy warriors. The warrior continues to tremble in his grasp. Alfred promises that they will be reborn as fine warriors in 4 days' time. The scene shifts to the Baleal forces' encampment. Isabella's subordinate looks up in confusion, asking Lady Isabella what the meaning of this is. She appears before him in a flash, her hand outstretched threateningly. She warns him with a smirk not to move an inch if he wants to live. The man is horrified to see his own shadow moving independently. Isabella recognizes the magic, realizing that Ophelia, the great vampire, is still alive. As the shadow familiar lunges, she calmly asks her sisters to do the honors. 2 previously unseen women appear in a flash of movement, their blades striking the possessed man from either side, swiftly neutralizing the threat. Isabella explains that it was one of Ophelia's familiars, revealing he had been possessed the whole time. As the subordinate demands to know who they are, one of the women explains that they are her sisters from different mothers. The other adds that they are always by her side, protecting their sweet elder sister. The subordinate is stunned to learn they were always there, concealed by invisibility and presence concealment magic. He shudders, calling them monsters and wondering how he never noticed their immense power. One of the sisters asks Isabella if Ophelia is strong, and Isabella confirms they are equals in combat ability. Though one sister seems nervous about the fight, Isabella reassures her that with the 3 of them at her side, Ophelia has no chance. The other sister laughs sadistically, asking if they can play with Ophelia and suggesting they chop off her limbs to take home. Isabella agrees, promising they will all have fun with her together. Hugging her sisters, Isabella admits her heart is racing at the thought of finally squaring off with Ophelia. Her subordinate can only shudder in fear at their conversation. With a look of pure ecstasy, she declares she cannot wait to shower herself in the blood of the great vampire. 4 days after Alfred began their training, he calls the warriors of Valnoras to attention. They snap to formation immediately, responding with a unified "Sir, yes, sir." He then asks the men to state their duty. The warriors roar in unison that their duty is to be the shield that protects the dragon people from harm. Alfred then asks if they are ready to face the Baleal household in combat. They respond with a resounding yes, vowing to crush the invading army and fight to the last to protect their home. Alfred looks on, moved by their transformation. He tells them they have truly become fine warriors, and they bow deeply, thanking him for his kind words. Lisa watches in disbelief, wondering what he did to cause such a change. Alfred then announces he is leaving command to someone else. She wonders who he could possibly be talking about. As Alfred muses that he does not see any other dragon people strong enough to lead. A massive, powerful presence suddenly descends upon the area. Lisa cries out in shock, asking what just happened. A colossal, draconic being appears, and Villonen greets him as General Deathblaze. Deathblaze explains that though he is now a dweller of hell, he was originally a dragon person from this very village. He addresses Alfred as Sir Cedric, stating that as a close friend of his master, he could never refuse his invitation. Lisa is shocked that Al knows someone who serves a demon king, while Thylos remarks on how terrifying it is for a dragon person to achieve such a rank. Alfred thinks to himself that there is more to be impressed by, starting with the 20 warriors who have inherited Mikuldra's powers. He also considers the great vampire, Ophelia. And last but not least, a divine general who directly serves the demon king Abaddon. Villonen addresses Alfred by his true title, declaring their preparations complete and inviting him to rest until the battle begins. Thylos shudders, unable to believe that such an overwhelmingly powerful army could be formed. Alfred asks Deathblaze if he will rest, noting that his dragon form must consume a lot of mana. Deathblaze thanks Sir Cedric for his kind words and agrees to his offer. As a bright light emanates from the general, Lisa and Thylos realize with astonishment that they are about to witness his human form. The light fades to reveal the powerful divine general's true form, a young, elfin girl. Lisa and Thylos are left completely speechless by this shocking revelation. Thylos and Lisa stare in disbelief, unable to comprehend that the mighty General Deathblaze is a young girl. Deathblaze seems unbothered by their shock, explaining that for a long-lived dragon, taking on a youthful human form is common sense. This explanation, however, only adds to Lisa's confusion. As Thylos and Lisa admit they both assumed Deathblaze was a man. Alfred steps in, telling them to take this as a lesson not to judge by appearances. He reveals they are about to face an army of 1,000 soldiers. He urges his companions not to falter, reminding them that they are much stronger. Filled with renewed confidence, Thylos and Lisa agree wholeheartedly. They are ready for the coming fight after all their hard work and preparation. In the distance, the armored forces of the enemy begin their advance. Meanwhile, at the Bale forces' encampment, Isabella conducts a final briefing with her commander. She orders him to lead a surprise assault on Valnoras, predicting a one-sided battle since the dragon people have been weakened and robbed of their dragon stones. Isabella anticipates that this assault will force their trump card, Ophelia, into play. The commander confirms that once Ophelia appears, the stage will be set for Isabella. She confidently states that after she defeats the great vampire, the dragon people's morale will collapse and they will abandon their futile resistance. She lays out the rest of her plan. With their forces at the front gates, the fleeing dragon people will be funneled into a cliff-lined valley. The commander excitedly elaborates that the elite mages he has positioned there will then move in, crushing any hope of escape. Isabella confirms this is precisely her intention. With a sadistic grin, Isabella declares that once all resistance is broken, she will capture the survivors and bring them to her mansion for her own amusement. The commander accepts his role, promising to oversee the situation. Isabella commands him to go forth and lead the first group into battle. As Alfred senses the arrival of Bale's forces, the commander leads his army forward. He smirks, eager to test the resistance of the dragon people he personally trained against. The commander laughs, already envisioning his victory and the seat on the Magic Guild's executive council it will earn him. A scout reports about 20 men heading straight for them. The commander identifies them as the village guardians and orders his platoon into a dragon slayer formation. His subordinate mocks the sanity of a mere 20 warriors, thinking they could even delay their advance. The subordinate agrees, stating that without their dragon stones the warriors are nothing. The commander adds that their will to fight has been broken, and they now advance only to save face, barely able to stop their bodies from shaking. He scoffs at their foolish courage, certain it will be scattered by a single one of their spells. A soldier calls out to the commander, announcing that the ritual magic formation for a giant monster-slaying spell is complete. The commander acknowledges this. He gives the order to activate the spell. The powerful spell Titan Strike materializes above the army. With the target confirmed, the commander raises his hand, declaring that this attack will signal the beginning of the war. With a roar, the commander orders his forces to blow the enemy to smithereens. On the opposing side, one of the dragon people warriors rallies his comrades, urging them to fight. As the massive magical blast hurtles toward them, the dragon people warriors are engulfed in a blinding light. Their forms begin to shift and writhe within the energy. Instead of being annihilated, the warriors emerge from the light transformed into colossal dragons. The commander stares in utter shock, unable to believe they could transform without their dragon stones. One of the newly formed dragons lets out a powerful roar, gathering energy in its maw. The transformed dragon people unleash a coordinated dragon burst breath, a torrent of energy that clashes with the Titan strike. The commander's subordinate cries out in alarm, realizing their attack is about to be completely overwhelmed. Soldiers scream in agony as the blast hits. The dragon's breath attack carves a path of utter destruction through their ranks. The battlefield is consumed by a massive explosion as the remaining dragons are silhouetted against the blast. The commander can only stare in horror, his mind unable to process the cataclysmic turn of events. The commander stares in disbelief, his mind reeling from the sudden turn of events. Before him are not simple dragons, but creatures of overwhelming strength, a sight he can only compare to a scene from Gehenna. Their power mirrors that of the great dragon defeated 2 years prior. He recognizes the horrifying visage of Mikaldra, the dragon king of the underworld. His subordinate rushes to his side, calling out to his lord. The battlefield is torn apart by the dragon's assault. The subordinate cries out that the dragons are mowing down their forces. The commander screams back in frustration, fully aware of their hopeless situation. A dragon unleashes a devastating blast of energy upon the terrified army. The dragons continue their rampage, devouring soldiers whole. The dragons show no mercy, cutting down soldiers without pause. Chaos reigns as the soldiers scream for their mothers and plead for their lives. The commander panics, realizing they are being stomped on like ants. He desperately calls for Lady Isabella, wondering where she is, but his subordinate informs him they haven't received her signal. The commander screams that she promised to intervene the moment they lost superiority. As the commander wonders why Isabella isn't coming to their aid, the battle rages on below. From a safe distance, Isabella and her followers watch the carnage unfold. She simply laughs, finding the situation amusing. One of Isabella's companions remarks that no one would ever expect a leader to abandon her army and escape on her own. She then asks Isabella if she's sure about this, pointing out that it's a waste not to capture the dragons when she could have easily dealt with them. Isabella explains that while she could defeat the dragons, using them as a trump card is a problematic move for her opponent. She knows Ophelia is pulling the strings and is aware that even those dragons aren't enough to guarantee a victory against her. By revealing her trump card at the very beginning, Ophelia has signaled she has another plan. Isabella concludes that Ophelia must have a second, decisive hidden blade ready. Her companion is impressed by her foresight, as Isabella states that her policy in combat is to never take risks. She admits she may seem paranoid, but carelessness leads to death. She ironically reflects that an old coot's teachings are helping her now. A memory surfaces of her teacher, Alfred, telling her to assault enemies like a blizzard when it's time to strike, but to move as fast as the gale when it's time to retreat. Isabella catches her breath, the memory still fresh in her mind. Isabella thinks to herself that Alfred was truly an unpleasant man. Another of her companions asks if she is sure about leaving her allies behind at the slightest chance of danger. Isabella scoffs, questioning when that rabble was ever considered her allies. To her, all she has lost is one disposable pawn. Isabella is confident that no one would guess she'd use such a route to escape. She decides they will head for a lone tree. She believes she is not in the mood to participate in Ophelia's games. Elsewhere, however, Cedric tells Ophelia that Isabella is likely thinking that very thing right now, believing herself to be out of harm's way. Ophelia finds it hard to believe, noting the path is a one-way road perfect for an ambush, and asks Cedric how he could possibly know Isabella would choose it. He replies simply that he knows how her mind works like the back of his hand. After all, he was the one who taught her large-scale military tactics for fighting monster kind. Isabella's companion acknowledges Master Cedric's skill, as Isabella declares they will now hunt him down. Meanwhile, Cedric smirks, revealing that his plan has multiple fronts. He states that the battlefield on the other side, which he left to another, should be starting right about now. Cutting back to the chaos, Bale and his subordinate flee on horseback, desperate to find a safer place. His subordinate protests that they didn't give the order to retreat and are abandoning their men. Bale roars back that he deliberately left them behind as bait. He calls them a necessary sacrifice, so the dragons will come after him and his subordinate next. He spots a bridge in the distance, a path to safety near a human settlement. His subordinate exclaims they are saved, while Bale greedily thinks that as long as his lands survive, he can squeeze more money from the peasants. Bale laughs maniacally, declaring that as long as he escapes, he can rebuild his power, a privilege of a grand noble like himself. As they approach, his subordinate notices a lone figure standing on the bridge, blocking their path. A voice recalls a past war, where he once stood resolute against 100 foes to safeguard his allies' retreat. The figure continues, explaining that he eventually became known as the Demon of Offen Bridge. He turns to the approaching riders, greeting his former lord after a long time. He addresses Bale by his full name, causing Bale's face to contort in pure terror. With his massive sword held ready, Alfred announces that he will now perform Bale's last rites. Bale shouts in recognition, shocked to see his former servant, Simon, standing before him. Simon, however, addresses the man on the other horse, calling him Master Alfred or perhaps Master Cedric. He then expresses his deepest gratitude for being allowed to confront his corrupt former master, Algren. Simon recalls his past pleas for the young master to live peacefully, knowing the path ahead would be a bloodbath. Despite this, he couldn't stop thinking about him and eventually sought him out. Their reunion led to an invitation for tea at Valnora's Garden of Respite, where Alfred had something important to discuss. During their talk, Simon begins to realize that the person before him is no longer just his young master, Alfred. He exclaims in shock, understanding now that he is speaking with the great sage, Sir Cedric. Cedric confirms that this is half correct but also half wrong, explaining that his situation is quite complex. Cedric explains that when he took over the boy's body, he inherited more than just memories. He asks Simon to confirm that he raised Alfred with love and care. With his hand over his heart, Cedric reveals that the boy's fond memories and deep appreciation for Simon still live on within him. He admits that these inherited emotions have swayed his actions. If he were only Cedric, he would have killed Algren without remorse. However, Simon's heartfelt words resonated within him, causing him to divert from his original plan. Cedric concludes that while he is now Cedric, Alfred still lives on within him. Taking a sip of his drink, he smiles warmly, complimenting Simon on the marvelous lemon tea that never disappoints. Tears well up in Simon's eyes as he sees the reflection of his young master in Cedric's smile. Cedric notes the elegant tea, prepared with 2 thinly sliced cuts of lemon. Simon knows this is the way his master always loved his tea, confirming for him that this man is, without a doubt, young Master Alfred. Simon reminds his master of the suggestion to live peacefully, but explains that without him, he is completely alone. Caring for Alfred has been his sole purpose in life, and he pleads not to have this one joy taken from him. Seeing his servant's devotion, Alfred relents, telling him to do as he likes. Overcome with emotion, Simon kneels and thanks his master, solemnly swearing to serve young Master Alfred with all his heart. Alfred admits that being called young master has felt odd for some time. While asking to be called Cedric would be a stretch, he makes one small request to at least drop the young part as he's not a child anymore. Simon laughs, agreeing to his master's wish. The scene flashes back to the bridge, where Algren had ordered Simon out of his way, desperate to cross. Simon, however, had stood his ground, refusing to move. Algren angrily questioned how he dared defy his master's orders. Simon declared that his only master is Alfred, and none other. He stated that if Master Alfred were there, Algren would surely perish. As his final act of loyalty, Simon intended to apprehend Algren and hand him over to the royal knights. Algren screamed that Simon had chosen death, calling him a relic with no hope of victory. Simon simply challenged them to try. He ordered his subordinate to end the old warrior. The subordinate, identifying Simon as the ancient warrior, boasted that he had mastered the rockwood sword arts and far surpassed Simon's prime. The subordinate charged forward, vowing to coat his blade in Simon's blood. Simon prepared to meet the attack, his own power crackling around him. His attacker lunged with a furious cry. Simon unleashed his own technique, a powerful surge of sword magic he called Violet Flash. The attack caught the subordinate completely by surprise, his mind struggling to comprehend what was happening as Simon rushed past him. The subordinate collapsed, defeated. Simon reflected that while age had taken its toll on the duration of his magic, ignoring defense against long-range attacks, he could fully devote his power to offense. He promised not to falter until his opponent was neutralized. Algren stared in disbelief, screaming that the display of power was absurd and impossible. Algren despaired, realizing that in barely an hour, his force of 1,000 strong had been laid to waste, and he now stood on the brink of defeat. He roared in fury, refusing to accept such a humiliation. In the Gorge of Lamentation, a woman with a white streak in her hair finds their designated rendezvous point deserted. Her short-haired companion nonchalantly suggests their magic guild personnel violated orders and that they should just go home. However, their blonde comrade vehemently disagrees, insisting they must be punished first. She then spots a flicker of mana deeper inside the canyon, suggesting their missing people might be there. As they venture deeper, their leader, Isabella, stares ahead in disbelief, questioning what has happened. Her short-haired companion recounts their simple plan, regroup with their subordinates and then bid farewell to Valnora's. The unexpected scene leaves them wondering why their troops are not where they should be. The horrifying truth is revealed in a gruesome pile of bodies. The short-haired woman cries out in shock, realizing all of their subordinates are dead. The women are stunned, unable to comprehend how their elite forces could have been wiped out. Isabella surmises they were decimated by a single attack, concluding that only one person present could possess such might. Suddenly, a blast of energy heads straight for them, forcing them to brace for impact. Isabella looks up and recognizes their assailant with a grim smile. She identifies the woman on the ledge as Ophelia, who stands accompanied by a flaming spirit. Ophelia greets Isabella, remarking that it has been some time. Isabella mockingly reminisces about their last encounter half a year ago when Cedric completely defeated Ophelia, leaving her bound in chains of light. She then asks what a miserable loser like her intends to do by standing in her way. Ophelia calmly concedes that she lost back then and stood no chance against Master Cedric. Ophelia questions why Isabella acts so triumphant when she was merely a sycophant at the time. With a gleeful and menacing expression, Isabella retorts that the sorry sight of Ophelia's defeat was simply unforgettable. Ophelia introduces her flaming spirit companion, Efreet. Isabella asks if Efreet is the trump card Ophelia has prepared against her. She laughs, suggesting that since they both have their own trump cards, their strength should be roughly equal. Isabella believes the deciding factor in their battle will be something else entirely. Ophelia coldly asks if Isabella truly believes that Grunt has what it takes to win against her sisters. Isabella finds this hilarious, calling her a jokester. The insult enrages Efreet. Ophelia clarifies that she came confident in her victory with Efreet as her sole trump card, but now dismisses the thought. Efreet is shocked, thinking Ophelia no longer believes in him. Isabella, confused by the sudden change, asks what she is implying. Ophelia dismisses the flaming spirit. A massive demon summoning circle appears, catching Isabella by surprise. She wonders if Ophelia plans to use the pile of corpses as a sacrifice. But Isabella realizes they're already ablaze, questioning how such a grand circle could be formed without a sacrifice. Ophelia, sensing her shock, offers to teach her something. With a sinister grin, Ophelia explains that a summoner needs no cost to request help from a friend. The explanation leaves Isabella utterly stunned. From the glowing circle, a colossal, terrifying demonic beast emerges, shaking the very ground of the gorge. Isabella's sisters cry out in terror, recognizing the creature as Deathblaze. Isabella stares in wide-eyed horror, realizing that Ophelia had another trump card all along. This monstrous summon is Ophelia's true trump card. Ophelia looks down at her opponents, ready for battle. She calmly invites them to begin. Isabella and her sisters brace themselves, their expressions a mixture of fear and resolve. Meanwhile, the confrontation between Algren and Simon continues, with Algren laughing manically and calling Simon foolish. Simon calmly explains that Algren poured all his magic into offense, sacrificing any and all defense simply to maintain his current form. Algren boasts that this means he can simply pulverize Simon from afar with long-range magic. He gloats about his heritage from a great line of sorcerers. He also brags about his status as a top-of-the-class graduate student. Unleashing a powerful spell, Algren screams that he won't let Simon pretend to be unaware of his power. Simon remains unfazed by the onslaught. He questions how Algren could genuinely believe he would be ignorant of such basic information. Simon calmly begins casting a spell of his own. A watching Lisa recognizes the immense power gathering, identifying it as 7th-tier magic. As Algren's attack nears, Simon deploys his defensive spell, the Greater Efreet Shield, protecting not only himself but also Cedric and a stunned Lisa. Lisa rushes to Simon's side, asking if he is all right, and he reassures her. Feeling a surge of new power, Lisa exclaims that she can now use spirit magic thanks to a contract with Efreet, feeling strong enough to block any spell. Fired up, she declares she's going to do her best. Stepping in front of Simon, Lisa points defiantly at Algren. She vows that she won't let him touch Mr. Simon with even a single one of his spells.